'cause Miss Lyric's here to educate. If you're a first time buyer, don't roll the dice. A long time investor searching for the right price. If you need to learn real estate lickety split, well, Lyric Armstrong will be your advocate. If anyone can help Miss Lyric can to keep your American dream in good hands. Oh yeah. For everything real estate, you're in the right place, 'cause Miss Lyric's here to educate. If you're a first time buyer, don't roll the dice. A long time investor searching for the right price. If you need to learn real estate lickety split, well, Lyric Armstrong will be your advocate. If anyone can help Miss Lyric can to keep your American dream in good hands. Oh yeah.
About what I did.
For everything real estate, you're in the right place, 'cause Miss Lyric's here to educate. If you're a first time buyer, don't roll the dice. A long time investor searching for the right price. If you need to learn real estate lickety split, well, Lyric Armstrong will be your advocate. If anyone can help Miss Lyric can to keep your American dream in good hands.
All right, I'm gonna be right there in just a minute.
For everything real estate, you're in the right place, 'cause Miss Lyric's here to educate. If you're a first time buyer, don't roll the dice. A long time investor searching for the
Almost
right
there.
price. If you need to learn real estate lickety split, well, Lyric Armstrong will be your advocate. If anyone can help Miss Lyric can to keep your American dream in good hands. Oh yeah.
All right. All right. All right. Good morning. We made it. We made it this morning. We've actually made it to Monday morning. And for those of you who are realtists and understand what we have been through in Los Angeles for the last couple of days, you know we have been very busy. We've done KJLH interviews, we've had Maxine Waters come out, we've done the home fair, and we've done a lot for the community and getting them ready for our particular community, helping them for home ownership, not only as becoming first-time home buyers, but how to buy the next property, what to do to secure it, to maintain it, and sustain it, and how to actually pass it down to generational wealth. So we did a lot of real estate this weekend. And someone asked me, if you're in real estate, why are you commenting on this trial? Well, there's lots of answers to that. The best answer I can give is because I'm not just in real estate, I'm actually a certified American Bar Associated certified paralegal. So I have legal experience, worked on trials, dealt with discovery, civil litigation, defense has been my strong suit. That's what I've done the most of. I've done some probate, but in some family law, but mostly defense litigation, civil litigation for defense. And because I have an opinion and I have a perspective. So hopefully everyone is rested up and had a great time. Maybe you've bought all your fireworks and got your brisket on the grill, got that started. I don't know what you're doing. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the holiday myself, and I hope you are too. I've been swimming, got in the pool all day yesterday, so still a little tired, but had a great time with the kids in the pool. Today we are on jury watch, day 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of the Massachusetts Karen Read trial. And I don't know if anyone's surprised by what has happened, but something happened a little earlier. We're going to take a look at that. I'm not surprised. I'm now to the position where I was last week. I felt like, okay, it didn't happen on Wednesday, so Thursday sounds like a good day. It didn't happen Thursday, so Friday we got on and we had our jury watch on Friday, remember? That was fun because we thought we had a verdict coming in, and actually it was a note that said, we're hung. We have no idea. We're done. We've tried. We're exhausted. We've looked at all the evidence. And of course, we had some argument from prosecution and we had some argument from the defense on opposite sides of the fence, understanding that having a hung jury it helps the defendant out to some degree. Of course, an acquittal is much more sought after. We definitely, if I were at Karen Reed, I'd be like, no, just, let me free. But the alternative is to be found guilty. So consequently, it did give some rise that they were looking at the evidence. They were trying to determine the best verdict, and they found that people or persons, however many, were unable to be unanimous. But Lolly came back and said, it's not enough time, Your Honor. And of course, the judge agreed. It was the first time. Well, it's first times for everything doesn't always mean the last time. So I want to thank everyone who got on last week and we watched jury together. We were verdict watched together. And I'm hoping that Peggy is feeling better, my dear. Hope you have had a great weekend of getting rest and restoration. All righty, let's get into the one and only fan. Not sure what that just said, but anyway, we're going to get into the one and only fan. Because the one and only fan is about the only fan there is for this jury watch. All right. Thank you to Law and Crime for presenting for us. Hopefully you can hear. Sometimes you can't. Let's try this out. The fan is a wiggling and a going. And 23 hours of deliberation. So local time, this was when it was 10:45 a.m., which was probably an hour ago, I believe. Yeah. About an hour ago. Okay, come on, Judge. We're ready. We're ready to hear what's up next. The fan is the only one that's okay with being in court this long. The rest of us feel like we should have a verdict by now. Really doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. Wait a minute. Everyone feels like we should have a verdict by now. One way or the other. All righty. There we go. Looks like we're moving. Oh. There we go.
You are unmuted.
Thank you. We're back in session. Maybe soon.
We're back on the record on the Karen Reed, Your Honor. We've got a question from the jury.
All right. So, Mr. Lally, I'd like to hear from the Commonwealth first about doing thorough deliberations.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last one.
I'd like to hear from the Commonwealth first about your view on whether the jury has conducted due and thorough deliberations.
Your Honor, while I understand that they have been at this for a while, I would submit that they have not, and I would ask the court not to make such a finding. Reasons for that, Your Honor, this jury heard, I believe, about 29 days or so of testimony, 657 different exhibits marked as evidence, 74 different witnesses who testified before them. And while I believe they've been out for somewhere in the vicinity of 22 or 23 hours, what I would submit to the court based on all of that, as well as the complexity of the issues presented to them, they really haven't even had 1 hour of deliberation equivalent to 1 day of testimony to each of the days of testimony that they've heard. So while they have been at it for a while, I would submit that based on the evidence and testimony and witnesses and the complexity of issues in this case, I would submit that they have not done a thorough deliberation up to this point.
Ms. Giannetti?
Of course you do.
Our view is that it's time for Tui Rodriguez. They've come back now twice, indicating essentially that they're hopelessly deadlocked. The content of this latest message is that they have been over all the evidence. Previous message said they did an exhaustive review. This time they said that they have fundamental disagreements about what the evidence means. And it's a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of lack of understanding. This court, when you sent the jury out, encouraged them not to take a straw vote, encouraged them to go over all the evidence in a very methodical manner. I think all indications are that they've done that. And this is what Tui Rodriguez is for. We asked the court to get it.
Yeah. All right. I think this has been an extraordinary jury. I've never seen a note like this reporting to be at an impasse. I do find that they're now, with the additional time that they went out without coming back Friday saying that they were deadlocked, is due and thorough deliberation. So I'm going to give Tui Rodriguez. So are they ready to come in, Jody?
Oh my goodness. So she just ruled against Lally.
So why don't I take a recess?
Take a recess, please. All right.
And then Nancy.
Okay, so they're gonna do recess. But sounds like she just ruled against Lally, that she said, look, they came back Friday. I don't know, I didn't see that one coming. Let's see what she tells them. Let's scoot forward.
All right. So, jurors, I am in receipt of your note. Judge Cannoni, despite our commitment to the duty entrusted to us, we find ourselves deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind. The divergence in our views are not rooted in a lack of understanding or effort, but deeply held convictions that each of us carry, ultimately leading to a point where consensus is unattainable. We recognize the weight of this admission and the implications it holds. So, Mr. Foreman and members of the jury, I have an instruction for you. Our Constitution and laws provide that in a criminal case, the principal method for deciding questions of fact is the verdict of a jury. In most cases, and perhaps strictly speaking in all cases, absolute certainty cannot be attained, nor is it expected. The verdict to which each juror agrees must, of course, be his or her own verdict, the result of his or her own convictions, and not merely an acquiescence in the conclusions of the other jurors. Still, in order to bring 12 minds to a unanimous result, you must examine the issues you have to decide with candor and with a proper regard and respect for each other's opinions. You should consider that it is desirable that this case be decided. You have been selected in the same manner and from the same source as any future jury would be selected. There is no reason to suppose that this case will ever be submitted to 12 persons who are more intelligent, more impartial, or more competent to decide it than you are, or that more or clearer evidence will be produced at another trial. With all this in mind, it is your duty to decide this case if you can do so conscientiously. In order to make a decision more attainable, the law always imposes the burden of proof on the Commonwealth to establish every essential element of each indictment beyond a reasonable doubt. If you are left with a reasonable doubt as to any essential element of any indictment, then the defendant is entitled to the benefit of that doubt and must be found not guilty on that indictment. In conferring together, you ought to give proper respect to each other's opinions and listen with an open mind to each other's arguments. Where there is disagreement, those jurors who would find the defendant not guilty should consider whether the doubt in their own minds is a reasonable one, if it makes no impression upon the minds of the other jurors who are equally honest and equally intelligent, who have heard the same evidence with the same attention, who have an equal desire to arrive at the truth, and who have taken the same oath as jurors. At the same time, those jurors who would find the defendant guilty ought seriously to ask themselves whether they may not reasonably doubt the correctness of their judgment if it is not shared by other members of the jury. They should ask themselves whether they should distrust the weight or sufficiency of the evidence if it has failed to convince the minds of their fellow jurors beyond a reasonable doubt. I will now ask you, Mr. Foreman, and members of the jury to return to your deliberations with these instructions in mind. And as with my final instructions and the supplemental instructions I sent in, I will send in a copy of this charge as well. All right, so may that be marked, Madam Court Reporter, please.
Whew. Okay.
All right, so thank you. We'll send you folks back out to deliver.
All rise for the court, please. Follow me.
Okay. Oh, look at the poor mommy. Poor mommy. That's a hard place to be in. Anything else?
You are muted.
Now? That's you are muted. Okay, great. So this is what transpired. We got back to the OnlyFans. The jurors are like, this fan is the only one that wants to be here, Your Honor. Let us go. Okay, we can stop sharing while we wait on the OnlyFans to tell us when the next time they come back in. Whew, that was close. I was like, wait, what did she rule against Lolly? Just because I know that was a very good, intelligible question. They didn't state it off record, but she, of course, read the question for the record. And that's important. So a lot of times you will, and I mean for the record in front of the jury, so they know as jurors that their question has been received, which question is being answered, what exactly is the judge looking at and reading and responding to. So that was very good of them to come back and ask definitively, can you define to us what the evidence is that we're supposed to be looking at? What is it that we're supposed to be considering evidence? And that goes to their original question when they asked for the report. And it was like, well, this is not evidence, so no, you cannot look at it. And then she read the instruction about how evidence and facts are really determined by the jurors. And so talk about being confused even more. It's like, great, but we don't know what the evidence is. Because we thought the report would be evidentiary, but yet you won't give us the cert report. One of the questions we received was polling the jury. Why not poll the jury to find out who agrees and who disagrees? Polling the jury is an act that is done, usually upon request. Maybe her jurisdiction does it automatically, I don't know. But it's after a verdict, okay? So once a verdict is rendered, then you poll the jury. So that they haven't rendered a verdict yet. They're still deliberating. So that's section 1163 in California. So I'm sure Massachusetts will have a section similar. But for California, it's when a verdict is rendered and before it is recorded, the jury may be polled at the request of either party. So the parties have to request it. The verdict has to be rendered. And that's how you know, and that's the Penal Code of California. So let's see if we can find, let's see, Penal Code, where are we at, Massachusetts? Okay. It's a rule, so it's a procedural rule, Criminal Procedural Rule 27 for Massachusetts. And for their citation, it's when a verdict is returned and before the verdict is recorded, the jury may be polled in the discretion of the judge. So there's the differences. So when you have one state versus another, and when people like me say, I know California law, I operate in California, I operate in Virginia, I operate in Nevada. I operate in Georgia. Wherever they state that they're operating, when we are giving our opinion, our thought process, our experiences, take them with the grain of salt, because just because this is our experience in California, Virginia, Florida, whatever, does not mean it translates to every other state. Consequently, just like I just read California's penal code that says either party can make the request for having the jurors polled after a verdict is rendered. Massachusetts, where this case is, it is a procedural rule, and it's when a verdict is returned and before the verdict is recorded. This is the same type of information. It's just worded a little differently. However, what time is it? Yeah, it's only okay. However, the polling happens in Massachusetts at the discretion of the judge, whereas California said, hey, either party can ask for it. So the judge has the power, and she hasn't done it, but also it's not yet time to exercise that power because they haven't returned an actual verdict. So that's where we are relative to the Karen Read trial. Tell me where you're coming from. Any particular questions, go ahead and put them in the chat so that we can answer them as we go through some of the past experience. So last week on Friday, we got to revisit Alan Jackson's closing, and we looked at some of the highlights of the trial relative to evidence. We looked at the arms, and we're trying to figure out how glass can actually produce any such marking. But now let's take a look and see what happened with Lolly, because our closing remark for Lolly was much better than his opening. However, I still remain that he has such a soothing presentation that it just about put me to sleep. It was very soothing. I was like, I don't know if it was just I didn't believe him, I'm not into it, or if I just wanted to go to sleep. But anyway, he was very soothing. So he obviously did something right. Obviously, because here we are, and we don't have a jury that 12 individuals feel like they can come to a conclusion of sentencing Karen Read, which is good to some extent because it is a very serious sentence to consider that she would be sentenced for murder. And a part of their last note to the judge was, we are taking this seriously and we can't just acquiesce. So I appreciate that, because that was one of my concerns. If it's just one juror, are they going to acquiesce to the rest of them and just go into peer pressure and say, I want my weekend? So they got their weekend, but I don't know if they had to think about the trial, if it loomed over their head, if they actually got to enjoy their weekend. We got 4th of July coming up. I'm like, I don't want them to just acquiesce to everyone's pressure, regardless. And even if it is 11 jurors for Karen Read and 1 for the Commonwealth, want them to be able to have a consensus that they can go home at night, sleep well, knowing that they came to the right decision. Well, they don't want to acquiesce. The judge says, good, so go back there and get back to work. So that means both sides did a great job. Lolly somehow presented a trial. Someone thinks he did. I didn't see it, but he presented a trial for someone, and they are believing his particular outcome. And the same thing with Karen Read. They presented a defense, and at least someone is believing her outcome, believing her defense. So what the verdict comes to as a full decision, we will soon find out. We're going to go to Court TV and listen to Lolly to see what did he
You can easily tell
actually
the age of a
do.
woman based off of her neck.
Oh, just hush. What did he actually do to help present a case for the Commonwealth? I think he did 2 good things. One, he made a lot of confusion. He made a much to do about a little of nothing. Okay, the fan is still going in case you guys want to know. It's local time 12:45. So we have got the local time of 12:45. Only fan is still moving. Jury is still in deliberation, likely having lunch, but nonetheless, they're still in deliberation. Lally, for the first for the trial in and of itself, he confused the issue. There were a lot of witnesses, and I don't know that every last one of them helped, but they may have helped in the sense there was so many witnesses that just the volume itself has made an impression. It definitely helped confuse a lot of the issues of what time did Jen McCabe actually see the car, which was between 12, what she said, 12:45, 12:40, 12:45. Karen Reed counter to that is her phone was hooked to the Wi-Fi at the Officer O'Keefe's house. So 12:45, she wasn't at Fairview. So obviously Jim McCabe was either wrong about the time or she saw a different car. You know, maybe not. But the reality is, did Lally prove one way or the other? I don't think so. But he definitely gave the jurors enough to think about to put them in the place where they're now deliberating for the 5th day in a row. All right. So, or, outside the weekend. Let's see. What did Lally say that was so good that just helped them make up their minds that she's guilty? Somebody says she's guilty. At least one person does so far.
I hit him. I hit him. I hit him. I hit him.
Okay. We know he said this 3 times in opening. We know that the witnesses said it 3 times in opening. Closing now has become 4 times. And the witness's testimony has changed over time that it was a question. Did I hit him? Do you think I hit him? Could I have hit him? And then they changed that into I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So those were the 3 top hit statements. He started with that. He started strong, much stronger than he did all trial.
Those are the words of the defendant. 4 times. You heard testimony from 4 different witnesses who overheard and observed those statements from the defendant on January 29th, 2022. You heard testimony from firefighter Timothy Nuttall. He was trying to bag, valve, mask Mr. O'Keefe. He was working on resuscitative efforts to try to save Mr. O'Keefe's life. He asked if anyone saw anything or knew what happened, and the defendant said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Firefighter Anthony Flamati was asking if anyone had information on why Mr. O'Keefe was there in the snow. The defendant repeatedly said, I hit him, I hit him, oh my God, I hit him. Firefighter Katie McLaughlin was tasked by firefighter Flamati with asking for biographical information and for what the cause was of the traumatic injuries that all the firefighters testified that they observed on Mr. O'Keefe. She asked the defendant, and the defendant said, I hit him repeatedly. Firefighter McLaughlin asked for clarification. You did what? And the defendant repeated, I hit him. Jennifer McCabe stated initially over the phone when speaking with the defendant that the defendant said, could I have hit him in the car while they're on the phone with Ms. Roberts going from Ms. McCabe's house to Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay, so that's how Lally makes sense of, excuse me. That is how Lally makes sense of the issue. He says, everyone else, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. That's her recounting, supposedly, what happened. When asked, that's how she recounted. Then he goes into Jennifer McCabe initially says. So this is the parsing. Jennifer McCabe supposedly is saying in the beginning, could I have, did I, would I, should, do you think I did? And then he explains that away. So he gives the answers to any doubt relative to what her statements were. It is, she had a plethora of statements. And a part of those statements was when she was talking about what happened to the officials and what transpired to the persons that were going to be taking record of her statements. She was definitive in saying, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Okay, Lally. I don't believe that's the evidence. That's not the way the evidence outlaid to me. But one of the things you can think of as a juror, this is a part of the last couple of things you hear. So Lally has cleaned up however the evidence presented through trial and kind of made a nice little bow around it and handed it to the jury at closing. Someone has accepted his gift of saying that was just a part of her statements, whereas the evidence of Karen Read screaming at the top of her lungs is such resounding evidence. It just stands very strongly that she, in fact, believed that he had died, but does not necessarily know why. She's in distress trying to figure out why and how. And so this is a good reminder to everyone. You have the right to remain silent. This is an American right. So if you're not in America, you may say, what in the world are you talking about? This is a part of our Miranda rights. So when you're in custody or when you're giving information over to an official, especially a first responder, that information has the ability to come into trial against you, which is what's happened. Whereas you hear a distressed woman trying to figure out what's going on, you can hear her outcry, but yet the officials, the first responders, the paramedics, the detective, I think it was, or trooper, whichever title they go by, has had an experience with her, hearing it differently, hearing her say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So in America, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say will be held against you in a court of law. That is a right you have, is to remain silent. And this is the time mostly when you should remain silent, when you don't know what you're talking about, when you're not sure, if you're just trying to figure something out, if you're just thinking out loud. This is not the time to have epithets and have, long thesis statements on what could and just might have happened, because here we are, and this is now played in trial. This is against her as a statement that she said.
Keith's house, did I hit him? Could I hit him? Once on scene, once asked, as Ms. McCabe described by an EMT, for name, age, things like that related to Mr. O'Keefe, what caused the trauma?
There you go.
She indicated in her testimony that the defendant said repeatedly, I hit him. You heard testimony from Officer Sarif, statements that he attributed to the defendant as saying that morning, this is all my fault. This is all my fault. I did this. This is what the defendant is saying on scene. Since then, stories changed a little bit. But those were the words that came from the defendant's mouth on January 29th, 2022, as John O'Keefe lay dying on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road, where the defendant had left him after striking him with her motor vehicle several hours before, and then left him freezing there in a blizzard.
So there was no proof that she struck him and left him in a freezing blizzard. As we talked about last live stream, there was his Apple Watch that gave proof that he had done a bit of walking around after arriving at 34 Fairview. And a part of his walking around seemingly was up a few flights of stairs. I think it was 3 flights, for which this home has. So if you're in California, like, we don't have 3 flights. Yeah, they had a basement, a main level, and an upstairs level. So that would be typically 3 flights of stairs in that one house at 34 Fairview. But Lally is like, don't worry about that Apple Watch because it's not accurate because Waze had some kind of count for him. And it was very like science is science, but it's not science enough. It was a very weird presentation by the prosecution during the time of the trial. So if you were taking notes and you were the YouTuber that was rewinding and replaying and getting that again and writing it down and pausing, you had an upper hand compared to the jurors who could only hear it as it was played out one good time. And hopefully they heard everything. According to the reporters of the room, it's very hard to hear in that space whenever the air conditioner was on, but it's very hot. So they need the air conditioner on. So everyone was fighting for sound and to be audible and to be heard relative to the information. Okay, the fan is still going. We're still 25 ends of deliberation. They keep scaring me because they keep changing something in their stream, but when I go to it, it's still the fan. So we don't have anything yet from the jurors, anything further from the jury. But Lally does he gives an argumentative statement. So she hit him, she left him, she knew she left him there, and she knew she hit him, and that's why she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. These are statements that are supportive of the Commonwealth's theory. So obviously, the way he presents them is going to be in support of the Commonwealth's theory. If you were like, but wait a minute, she was calling him, she was trying to find him, she was upset. And can you imagine for yourself if you feel like you left your boyfriend at a party, you were flirting with someone that was going to be at this party, but you left him alone for your main dude, but now they're going to be together in the same room, but you're leaving them because you don't want to be bothered, or you don't feel well. I think that was one of her reasons. She didn't feel well. It was too long of a night. You want to lay down. You need to go home. You want to be at your own home. You got your own personal body concerns, and you just don't feel well enough. And then the next thing you know, as you're thinking, oh my gosh, he must be cheating. Oh my gosh, he got to be hooking up with somebody else. And you're yelling and you're cursing him out on the phone, and you're thinking the worst of him as him being a person of character, not the worst of him like that, but the worst of him like you're out cheating, and I'm sitting here taking care of your kids, and you're supposed to be home with your kids, and I got to go home to my house, and you're feeling undervalued. This is the presentation that the evidence gave. It doesn't matter because Adam Lally says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. And then he goes on and on. The bottom line is the statements that were made, though you may have meant them as oh my God, what happened? Could this have happened? I feel so guilty for leaving him. I feel so terrible for thinking the worst about him, thinking that he was cheating and he actually is dying. Oh my, can you imagine how crazy you feel? You think he's cheating and he's actually somewhere dying. That has got to be the worst feeling. But yet, for the Commonwealth, for the state's case, for the criminal's case, it's you're admitting guilt. So that's why you need to exercise your right to be quiet, because you say things out of distress, you say things out of concern, and it's taken and put into whatever context it works for them, whatever context happens to help their theory, whatever context is necessary to prove their case. So anything and everything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. It's not for your benefit. I don't care how nice they're being towards you. I don't care how welcoming they are to the information that you're given. They're going to take it and use it to their own benefit, and it can be used against you. So stay quiet, get an attorney, talk to every official later. Back to Lolly.
There's certain things that have come up over the course of this trial as far as evidence and testimony are concerned, little things. And what I would suggest to you, it's those little things that are quite telling as it pertains to the defendant's statements and the defendant's actions over the course of January 28th and January 29th and beyond. I'm going to bring some of those to your attention as I go through, but just ask you to keep that in mind as far as when you're deliberating, when you're reviewing this testimony and this evidence. The little things matter. The little things start piling up in this case. Throughout the course of this trial, you've heard a lot of purported evidence or questions of witnesses in an attempt to distract you from the evidence in this case. It's essentially defense by obfuscation. It's a three-card monitor. The facts and the evidence in this case are your card. They're the Queen of Hearts. And so what I want you to, or what the defense wants you to do, is not look at that card. Look at anything else. Look at movement. Look at this person. Look at that person. Look at text messages. Look at this. Don't pay attention to the facts and the evidence, because if you do, what it will.
I'm sorry. Look at movement. Look at anything else. Don't look at the facts and the evidence of this case. This has got to go down in history as the only prosecution ever to want you not to look at the evidence of Celebrate. And I mean, this is third-party evidence. They're saying, keep my name out your mouth. Stop talking about us. Leave us alone. They don't want to be bothered. They don't want you talking about Apple Watch. Is like, oh my God, shut up. But they are third parties. They have no dog in this fight. They're not trying to prove a case. They're not trying to disprove a case. And the prosecution says, oh, the defense wants you to look over here at evidence that's not evidence. Look at the cell phone records, the text messages that are not evidence. Look at the wait, let me see what's going on. Okay, nope, still the fan. Look at what did they say? The text messages and the movement. He's reduced the evidence to the movement. Well, movement matters, Lolly. Movement matters. If the man is moving while she's driving away and gone to the house and he's still moving, he's not dead. Hello?
What it will ineluctably lead you to is that the defendant is guilty of each of the three indictments before this court.
She didn't plead guilty.
Why
What
do you
did she
tell
say?
your patients to never use lotion on crepey skin?
When I tell my patients to avoid moisturizing,
I tell my patients to stop talking to you.
The evidence and the facts of this case
No
are
commercials.
for you, the jury, to decide. Using your common sense, using your life experiences as your guide through that.
Okay, I just want to give a quick apology. I do not endorse any of these particular advertisements. I actually have no control of them popping up or not popping up. Last week, when I tried to control them not popping up, the screen went black in between each coming back, sharing and stop sharing. So I have to continuously share so that the stream doesn't go black. I don't want you guys to be like, what happened? They left me. We didn't. I came right back, but unfortunately, whatever the system is, it just did not show the whole process of Alan's closing. And we know body language and movement, Lally, makes a difference. So it shows that you're alive. And then also it's a part of the theatrics of the closing. So I want to make sure you see that, but I want to give a very big disclosure. I have nothing to do with any one of these ads, okay? So like I said, I am the ad. I'm the commercial. So ignore all other commercials. There we go. All right.
Before I turn to that evidence that I will submit to you ineluctably demonstrates the defendant's guilt,
Lally.
let me first just address Trooper
I
Proctor.
had no evidence.
The text messages from Trooper Proctor are unprofessional, they're indefensible, they're inexcusable. However,
Are they biased, Lally? Are they biased? I mean, representation of bias? I mean, clues that he's actually biased. Are they tunnel visioned? Is she actually the only suspect because she's a see you next Tuesday? Is she actually the only suspect because she has a flat derriere? Is she actually the only potential suspect because she's crazy according to Proctor? But they're just indefensible words. But he is the detective on the case. It's not just indefensible words. It is actual evidence of bias.
as distasteful as those messages are,
Distasteful. This is distasteful.
and their content is, I submit they had no bearing whatsoever or impact whatsoever on the integrity of the
Lies.
entirety of the investigation that the Massachusetts State Police collectively conducted into John O'Keefe's death here.
Does that include the ME who says there's no way this had anything to do with a vehicle?
As was asked of
She's not a part of the
on
collective
cross-examination, these were texts from his personal phone that
So?
he never thought would see the light of day. He was asked
Yeah,
whether
he
or
got
not
caught.
he ever thought that he would be asked about these in a courtroom, put to him in sort of a safe space, a safe place for him to discuss, if you will. What do you not see in those text messages? You don't see any discussion or any illusion of any conspiracy, of any framing of the defendant, of any planting of any evidence.
Maybe not, because when the others in that text message saw that it happened on a police officer's lawn, it was, oh, police officer must have been so drunk that he killed someone. It was, oh my goodness, he's going to go down. And the response from Proctor was, oh, no way. He's a cop. He's a Canton cop. She's going down. Who's she? The girlfriend? I don't know, Lally. Sounds conspiratorial to me, but all right.
No evidence whatsoever. Why? Because it didn't happen. There is no conspiracy. There is no cover-up. There is no evidence of any beyond speculation, rampant speculation and conjecture on behalf of the defense.
But he did a job. He did
Two
a good
things
job.
can be true at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. The texts from Trooper Proctor are distasteful, they're disrespectful, they're unprofessional. There's no defense to them. And the defendant killed John O'Keefe. Turning to the evidence, let me first talk a little bit about John O'Keefe. You heard a lot about him over the course of this trial, about his selfless story through his family and friends that loved him, including his adopted niece and nephew. You heard a lot about the lives he touched and the different people who he had friendships with. You heard a lot about from those particular friends and from his family. Turning to what I would submit to you as a timeline.
Yay, timeline.
You won't believe how old this couple is.
Excuse me? I ask people who are in really good shape what kind of diets they're on.
Timeline. Yay, Lally. Timeline. Finally. Next time, do that in the beginning.
This may be a little hard to see up here. What I'm going to go is from left to right.
Yes, it's been hard all
January
hard
28th,
on trial.
2022, 9:49 in the morning, Karen and John begin fighting over text messages. 2:25 p.m. in the afternoon, the defendant texts Mr. O'Keefe, tell me if you are interested in someone else. Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. John texts back, nope. 2:25.
I'm sorry, where are we in this timeline? Karen and fighting, Karen to tell me. Okay, so 2:25 p.m. the day before. So this is the day they decide to go out together. Now okay. All right, Lally. So earlier in the day, another lovers quorum, which is so like legitimately like the thing. Why haven't you called me in the last week? Why haven't I heard from you? Why don't we spend time together like we used to? What's changed? Are you thinking about someone else? Are you interested in someone else? Can't think of any other reason you've been like this. This is her question to him. Do you still have the same interest in me that you had before? Are you seeing someone else? His response is nope. He's a dude. It's one word. Nope. That ain't it. That's not what's going on. So then he comes back. Things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? So he's stating, listen, we've had issues for whatever the reasons. They're not moralized here, but it's not me interested in someone else. I'm just taking a break or a breather. That's his thing. Then John texts Karen, sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now. So they've, in John's eyes, it's been a continuous argument at least once a week. We know that they had the argument when they went out of town. She thought he was lovey-dovey with someone who calls him like a godfather or something in her life. That she's so much younger than him, and she feels like he's more like an uncle or godfather. And John goes, "Oh my God, stop calling." So I guess she was calling a gazillion times. She texts him, "So you're not into this anymore? Like, just make it plain to me. Are we moving on?" John goes, "I'm not answering. Stop calling." Then Karen texts John, "Then stop starting with me." So she goes, "Well, then stop starting with me." And he goes, "Uh-oh. Verdict, something going on with Verdict." But you know, Law & Crime does this to us. So hold on. Hold on, guys, 1 second. Let me take a look at something. Okay, so Verdict Watch really looks like what they were doing. Let's get off of this real quick. Looks like what they're doing is showing what happened after here we are. Looks like they were showing what happened after they came back from the jury, but let's just double check and see, because this is them coming outside of the courthouse. So let's just double check and see what this is about. So 1:15 p.m. local time.
Alan, Karen, how are you feeling today?
Karen, what's your message?
Karen, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, so this is after the jury's question. You know, they get me every time Law & Crime does this to me. No. I don't care about that. See, that's the thing. Law & Crime doesn't understand. We don't care about what's happening in the outside of the court. You know, yeah. Anyway, so they're showing Law & Crime is showing some of the footage from earlier, and they got me excited once again, thinking we had some more information coming out from the jury, but we don't. So let's get back into where we were, which was the closing argument. And I swear, I do not know. Okay, guys, sorry. I am trying to figure out what Law and Order is doing. They're just replaying stuff from the outdoors of the defense leaving, defense coming back. Okay, yippity skippity. So getting back into to Lolly's great closing, that obviously that's part of the reason. Between Lolly and Alan, they have done a great job in their own perspectives of keeping this jury confused as to what actually is the case. Did they actually prove a thing or two? No, not really. Yeah, so Law & Crime is just doing outside screenshots of what happened or whatever recording. So let's get back into the exhibit. So she's like, John says, "I'm not answering, stop calling." Karen's like, "Then stop starting with me." And John's like, "I'm going to grab a drink in a bit." Karen texts Aaron O'Keefe asking if she can go out without Paul. Karen says, wish I didn't speak to another O'Keefe after 2004. And okay, whatever. Whatever. So this is 2:38 p.m. Oh my Lordy, have mercy. Can you think of all the arguments you had with your loved one? And I mean, what's one of the main arguments? You're not you're not giving me enough attention. That's like every couple knows the number one argument is you're not giving me enough attention. It's not like it was in the beginning. It's never going to be like it was in the beginning, because the beginning was the beginning. Like it was brand new, fresh, and completely just out, out of nowhere. So that's always the argument. It's a silly argument, but we all have them. Every couple has them. They have this type of argument somewhere starting at 9 a.m., 2:38 p.m. According to Lolly, I feel like we're missing pieces, but whatever. This is Lolly's demonstrative for the jurors. This is their argument. Well, guess what? There's a whole slew of video too that comes after this, and they are huggy and kissy and lovey and dovey, and that's what happens. You get into something that is stupid. It's a stupid. What sense is, I don't even know. She thinks he's interested in someone else. He says, no, I'm not interested in anyone else. We're arguing. I don't want to argue. And so what do? They make the concerted effort to go out and have a good time. And according to everybody who witnessed, they went out and had a very good time.
Mr. O'Keefe texted the defendant, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? This is also testimony that you heard through multiple sources, whether it be phones, whether it be from the children, whether it be from other friends or family members, as to the relationship in the month.
I actually agree with Alan. We don't know what the testimony was from the children exactly, because that was not broadcasted. Obviously, they are children. Respect the kids. Leave the family alone. Please leave the family alone, especially the children. So we don't know exactly what they said, but according to Alan, and now you're listening to Lolly, all the children had to say is they had arguments about silly things, whether they were together, not together, or whether she was spoiling the children too much.
Months and weeks leading up to John's murder. 2:32 p.m. John texts the defendant.
If every relationship went on trial right now, we'd all be for a rude awakening. There's just so commonality to these arguments.
Of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now.
Yes. Oh, I just
then
read all
texts
that
the defendant
long.
phone call this afternoon as she's continuing to needle and try to engage him in a fight that he doesn't want to have.
She's not.
2:33 p.m.
She's not trying to have a fight, Lally. She's trying to have closure. Women like closure. Either we're together or we ain't. Yay or nay. And if it's yay, prove it. If it's nay, fine. It's not an argument. That's a tell me what it is conversation.
Defendant texts John, so you're not into this anymore. 2:34 p.m.
I'm not into this anymore.
John texts the defendant, I am not answering. Stop calling. The defendant then texts John, then stop starting with me. 2:38 p.m. The defendant texts John, I'm going to grab a drink in a bit. 2:38 in the afternoon. Around 3 p.m. is the testimony you heard from Aaron O'Keefe in regard to the defendant texting her, asking if she can go out without her husband, Paul. Asking to go out for a drink. This is while Aaron O'Keefe testified she was waiting for one of her children at the bus stop, picking that child up around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This is also the point in which the defendant says to Ms. O'Keefe, wish I didn't speak to another O'Keefe after 2004. 7:30 p.m., you have Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano arriving at C.F. McCarthy's, with the defendant arriving at 8:51. 8:58 p.m. is when the defendant receives drink number 1 at C.F. McCarthy's. Vodka soda, tall cylinder glass, lime pastrami. 9:13 p.m., drink number 2. 9:20 p.m., drink number 3. 9:33 p.m., drink number 4. 9:57 p.m., drink number 5. 10:22 p.m., drink number 6. 10:29 p.m., drink number 7.
In that context, there's a very good strategy play that just happened, and I don't know if we really talked about it. We might have overlooked it as a community, but Lolly does a great job here. He highlights, I shall say, the argument, the strife, and he turns that into drinks. Drink 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. But these drinks were not like at home depressing and I'm so sad my relationship is not doing right and he's not answering me and oh by golly he barely responded and I don't know where we're headed or da da da. He did not decipher the two. He just presented the evidence in a very crafty way, in my opinion. It was very creative to say, hey, we had a problem or two. We were getting ready to get in an argument. And then all of a sudden she's having all these drinks. They're drinking together. Are they drinking their problems away? I don't know about that, but they were literally having a great time. That's really what they were. Those drinks were coupled with few kisses, lots of hugs, laughter, friends were around. It was a great time. It wasn't just drinks, but Lally does a great job at highlighting, you know, maybe there was something else at play beyond just having a great time. These are a lot of drinks.
7 drinks from 8:58 p.m. through 10:29 p.m. when she receives that last drink at C.F. McCarthy's. The drink that she indicates to Sergeant Mechanic and several others on the next day that she did not take with her from C.F. McCarthy's to the waterfall, which several individuals at the waterfall testify that she produced from her coat when she walked in, and that you can clearly see on the C.F. McCarthy's video her walking out the door with the same tall cylinder glass in her right hand. Now, understanding that some of these drinks are not the full tall cylinder drinks, what she's doing is she's getting shot glasses of vodka and then pouring them into the drink after she's consumed the drink.
Oh, heavens to Betsy. Don't get shot glasses of vodka.
Drink. 10:54 p.m. The defendant and Mr. O'Keefe arrive at the waterfall, during the course of which, on an hour that they're there, the defendant receives drinks number 8 and drinks number 9.
Your child needs these 3 key factors to get into an Ivy League.
12:10 a.m. from the waterfall video, you have Ms. McCabe, Ms. Kolakithis, and the defendant departing the waterfall together. Interestingly, around the same time, you also have the text and screenshot communications between Colin Albert and Allison McCabe in reference to him getting picked up at that time. You also have testimony from Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert Jr. in reference to them sort of walking in from the waterfall as Colin Albert is walking out of 34 Fairview Road, gets picked up by Ms. McCabe, and then is driven home. 1 minute later, 12:11, Mr. O'Keefe is then on the waterfall video walking out with cocktail glass in his right hand. At 12:14 a.m., Mr. O'Keefe texts Ms. McCabe, where to? 12:14 a.m., based on the fact that she's driving, and Mme. McCabe indicated in his testimony that she should call him instead of texting while driving, Ms. McCabe calls John O'Keefe. He speaks with him regarding directions, sort of going over which way to come in, Chapman Street, over Cedar Crest, as far as coming into Fairview Road. 12:38 a.m., the defendant's vehicle drives by the Canton Library. You can see that on the video. 12:56, the defendant drives by the Temple Beth Abraham video. Again, you can see that on the video. Remember also the testimony from Lieutenant Tully in regard to the CSLI data and the ranging data in reference to it coinciding with what you observed, the black SUV from each of those respective videos. 12:32, Mr. O'Keefe enters 34 Fairview Road into his Waze app on his phone. 12:23 a.m. is when the defendant conducts a 3-point turn on Cedar Crest and travels back toward Fairview. That's from Mr. O'Keefe's GPS native location data from his phone.
Oh, now we can look at the data. That's the thing about looking at data. Such nefarious activity right here. This is so deceiving. Don't look at that data, but look at this data. Why are we looking at phone data, Lally? You just told us data was not important. Movement was not important. The Apple data is not important. You just told us it was not important. But look at that data, because that one's important. You
Around
look
the
at it
same
all
time,
or none.
12:23 and
All or
12:24
none.
is when you have that testimony from Ryan Nagel, Heather Maxson, and Ricky D'Antono pulling into Fairview Road around the same time and pulling in behind the dark SUV. 12:25 a.m. is the last native location GPS data of John O'Keefe's phone. It's in that area between 32, 34 Fairview Road, where his body is discovered the next morning, in which there is no movement of that phone from that 12:25 a.m. period until Miss Roberts then picks up the phone on the grass underneath Mr. O'Keefe's body sometime after 6 a.m. What you have up on the screen right now is that data, those plotting points that Trooper Garino was.
Is that right? Was there no movement? Because I could have sworn we had acceleration up and down stairs, or elevation nonetheless, whatever the Apple Watch came out to say. So he's saying there's no movement of the phone. Okay. Because the Waze app was on the phone. Okay. The Waze app is for the movement of a car, not the movement of the body. And the Apple Watch, which is to record the movement of the body, said the body moved and went up and down. It had some elevation and came back down. It dealt with some stairs, according to Jackson. So, okay, that's a crafty way to put it. There was no movement of the phone. The phone says he was at 34 Fairview. There actually is no argument that he was at 34 Fairview. The argument is, why wasn't 34 Fairview treated as a crime scene? That was the argument.
Testifying about as far as the movement of the vehicle. The movement of the vehicle as it comes down Cedar Crest, passes by Fairview, reverses direction, and then comes down Fairview, moving up, as the witnesses described, eventually stopping in that area of the property line between 32 and 34 Fairview Road.
Thinking I'm gonna start cutting carbs. I need to drop my.
So many commercials.
Which happens to coincide with the vehicle control history database information from the Toyota tech stream.
Okay. It coincides in time or it coincides in distance? Okay, time. So the time, God, what does this little bitty writing say? Oh, darn it. Okay, hold on. What happened?
Which happens to coincide with the vehicle control history database.
Okay, vehicle control history database. They're going to make it bigger. No, it doesn't make it bigger. It only makes the outside parts bigger, which we don't need those bigger. Looks like it's saying 11 something 55 seconds in time. So what time of day is this, Lally? I mean, honestly, if the vehicle control system says that she did this before 12 o'clock midnight, then I don't think you have a case.
Information from the Toyota tech stream, which you now have up on the screen before you here, indicating that following that 3-point turn, approximately 8 minutes after that, from Trooper Paul's testimony, as far as the mileage, 36 to 38 miles, matching up with the time that the vehicle is in front of 34 Fairview Road, that the vehicle travels in reverse, in a straight line, for 24.2 miles per hour for 62 and a half feet, with a minor steering angle change, which the trooper indicated was consistent with a pedestrian collision. At 12:30 a.m., you have that second triggering event 8 minutes after the 3-point turn when the vehicle is in reverse at 24.2 miles an hour. 12:35 is when the defendant calls John, and that's unanswered. 12:36 is around the time that the defendant's phone connects to the Wi-Fi at One Meadows Ave, Mr. O'Keefe's home. 12:37 is when the defendant leaves this voicemail. So within minutes of that vehicle's data, going 24.2 miles an hour in reverse for 62.5 feet, the defendant leaves that voicemail, seething in rage as she's screaming, "John, I fucking hate you." 12:40 to 12:42, Ms. McCabe is texting Mr. O'Keefe. She tries calling Mr. O'Keefe, gets no answer. If you recall from her testimony around this time frame, about 12:40, she was unsure whether the vehicle was actually still out front or if it had gone at that point. But she was looking for John because she had seen the defendant's vehicle in front of the house and no one had come in. So she was wondering where her friend, Mr. O'Keefe, was. 12:55, the defendant texts John, "See you later." 12:59, the defendant calls, leaves another voicemail for Mr. O'Keefe. Exhibit 637, it sounded like this.
John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows what the fuck you are, you fucking pervert.
But somebody did know where Mr. O'Keefe was. The defendant knew exactly where he was. She had driven him there. She had struck him there. She had left him to die there. 1:02 a.m., the defendant leaves another voicemail with no content. And then she texts John, "Your kids are fucking alone." 1:09 a.m., the defendant texts John, "I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone." She's not. GPS, as far as it never disconnects from the Wi-Fi until the following morning. There's no indication that Ms. Reed left and went to her home in Mansfield at any point. 1:10 a.m., the defendant calls her parents. 1:11 a.m., she calls Mr. O'Keefe and leaves this voicemail.
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit Amy. I need to go home. You're fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
Wow.
18 a.m., the defendant.
Wait a minute. Did she say kill yourself? No. She said F yourself. And though the language is colorful and it's, oh, grab my pearls, I had gas. The truth is, how would you feel? Sometimes we forget people are people. Other people are human people, and they're human beings, and they have feelings. And just like you have your own response, they have their response. People have a different way of looking at the same thing. How would you feel? Put this in the chat. How would you feel? Would you feel all lovey and great and phenomenal and feel worthy and appreciated if you were sitting up there with someone else's children waiting for them to come home? And I think the other thing that we forget is that she herself in that time frame thought he was at the waterfall. So it wasn't just like, where are you? It's kind of like, you should be here by now. She'd forgotten because she had 7, 8, 9 drinks, according to Lolly. He was counting. She had all them drinks and God knows what else was in her system. And she forgot she dropped him off at Fairview. She had to be reminded of that many, many hours later. So how would you feel? Okay, let's see what's going on. I feel like something's going on. Let me make sure see what's happening in trial. Are we at the fan? No, we're still at recorded earlier. Okay, they still have recorded earlier tapes. But how would you feel? You'd be pissed too. You'd be cursing them out too.
Now, about 1:43 or 1:45 a.m. is when Julie Nagel testified that they were leaving the house. And she sees a large black object on the lawn near the flagpole while leaving 34 Fairview Road. Doesn't think much of it at the time, isn't expecting Mr. O'Keefe or anybody to be out on the front lawn. 4:42 a.m. The defendant calls and speaks. The calls to her parents are finally answered. 4:49 a.m. Defendant calls Ms. Camerano, screaming, "Where's Mike?" 4:50.
Okay, I want to see this timeline. I don't. Okay, Lolly says, "What?" Karen texts John, "I'm back in Mansfield. The kids are home alone." This is 1:09 a.m. Okay. There was a time when they were talking about this during trial, and they kept saying 12:36, 12:40 something. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. She just dropped him off at 12:15, 12:20. So 1:09 a.m. She's expecting him back. Okay, that's still kind of soon if you're thinking, okay, he's going to go hang out with the fellas, but whatever. She wanted to go home. She wanted to go to her house. She didn't want to sit and watch the kids. Karen calls her parents at 1:10. Okay. Karen leaves voicemail for John, which she's like, you're a douchebag for cheating on me. You should be here with your children. I'm laying up here with your children. You should be here. Karen leaves voicemail again, same sentiment. All right, 1:43 a.m. Julie Nagel sees large black object on near flagpole leaving. So Lolly now asserts that she wasn't expecting it to be him. She didn't know what it was. She wasn't expecting it to be a dead body. That's not the testimony. The testimony was Miss Nagel was so drunk off of the beer that she had, she really just thought, oh, maybe I didn't see what I thought I saw. And she was trying to tell people, and they were like, what are you talking about? So they didn't seem to understand or see it either. So she was imagining things. Well, I don't know why anybody would have faith in her recollection. One, she was drunk. Two, maybe she saw something then, or maybe the impression of the trial has gotten her to think that she's seen something. I don't know, but I don't see evidence in that in any kind of way, because no one saw it and she didn't do anything about it. She didn't say, okay, well, stop, turn around. She didn't tell the drivers. She just told her friend in the back, who had no idea what she was talking about. Okay, Karen speaks with her parents again at 42. Yeah, because he's not home. Why is it? Why? Okay, whatever. Yeah, she speaks to her parents. Okay, great. Karen calls Camerano, screaming, "Where's Mike?" Because she remembers that they were hanging out with Mike. Where's Mike? I know where O'Keefe is. Officer O'Keefe. Karen has Kaylee call John, because Jen McCabe, because she's on the phone with she's calling John. She's like in the background screaming and at John. Cell phone, I guess. I don't know. She's screaming at somebody. And Kaylee calls Jen McCabe. John didn't come home. We got in a fight and I left him at the waterfall. Well, let me explain something to you. If you committed a crime and you're a big old mastermind about it, last thing you're going to say is we got into a fight. The last thing you're going to do is leave voice messages that seem like you're fighting. You're going to be like, we're the most lovey-dovey of people, and I love him so much, and he didn't come home, something's wrong. You're not going to be like, I hate you, John, you're an effing this. Be logical. The other thing was, I think that gets lost a lot in this trial because there's so much other evidence. But the other part that was interesting was that while they were at Waterfall or somewhere around Waterfall, she has someone taking interest in her, making a pass at her in his presence, and it's not cool. So they leave, and she's leaving, and they're like, come on, Karen, come with us. That's Jen McCabe. And she's like, no, I'm going home. I'm going wherever. And John comes out eventually, and he goes with her and it's like, no, we're going to go together wherever we go, which ends up being she drops him off at Fairview. But her recollection of the night is she left him at Waterfall. This is what she thinks at 4:53 a.m. She's not thinking about Fairview. She didn't even think she made it there until she talks to McCabe later, closer to the 6 o'clock time. Karen calls Carrie Roberts. John's dead. Carrie, and hangs up. Okay, and I think the reason why she said that was because he must be dead if he didn't come home to his kids, because that's how reliable he was. Even when he cheated, even if he did something, that looked like cheating or nefarious or some kind of step out, he was home at a decent hour for his children. You could count on him. It seemed that kind of thing's true for all the friends. You could count on him. So
3 in the morning is when the defendant instructs Kaylee, Mr. O'Keefe's niece, to call Miss McCabe. Why? Because the defendant doesn't have Miss McCabe's phone number.
Oh, okay. That's
Indicates
why.
that John
Great.
didn't come home. We got in a fight, and I left him at the waterfall. Those are the first statements or the first version of events that she's able to communicate out to the world as to what happened to Mr. O'Keefe and where he is. We got into a fight. I left him at the waterfall. 5 a.m., the defendant calls Kerry Roberts, saying, John's dead, Kerry, hangs up the phone. 5:01, the defendant calls Kerry Roberts again. And it's at this point that she indicates that John's dead, he must have been hit by a cloud. 5:07 a.m., the defendant leaves One Meadows Ave. You have the video of that. It's number 153 in Exhibit 6. We'll get to that a little more in a moment. About 5:10 a.m., the defendant calls Kerry Roberts. Ms. Roberts starts calling hospitals, calling 911. Something that you would do if you didn't know where Mr. O'Keefe was for all of these hours, that all of these other phone calls are being made and these text messages are being sent and calling your parents and all of these other things. No calls to 911 from the defendant. While John O'Keefe is laying, freezing, and dying from a brain injury and a skull fracture on the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road. 5:11 a.m., the defendant's vehicle is seen on the Canton Library camera heading towards the waterfall.
Why I'll never use lotion on crepey skin.
Girl, hush. Vaseline.
Seems to be sort of retracing the steps. 5:18 a.m. The defendant's vehicle is seen at Washington Street and Chapman on the Temple Beth Abraham video, heading in the same direction that it was the night before when it was heading to 34 Fairview Road. 5:35 is when the defendant arrives at Miss McCabe's house. Ms. Roberts arrives shortly thereafter. Both of them see the broken tail light at that time in the driveway. Now that gap of 5:18 to 5:35 is way too much time to be driving from the area of the waterfall to Jennifer McCabe's house. And as I indicated a moment before, heading in the same direction now, indicated to 5:35 time in the driveway. Shortly thereafter, both of them see the broken tail light at that time in the driveway. Now that gap of 5:18 to 5:35 is way too much time to be driving from the area of the waterfall to Jennifer McCabe's house. And as
But wait, Lolly, it was a blizzard. Remember, it was snowing. So see, that's the thing. Lolly did a great job of proving it was snowing, but when it comes down to it was snowing, it only means she did something nefarious. Not that she was trying to drive in a blizzard and it was snowing and it was hard for her to get around and she was going too slow and couldn't get there in good time and she took too much time because she was extra overly cautious in her driving, or she was emotionally frantic and couldn't drive with clarity. She must have been up to no good because she took too long to get to the waterfall. Okay, thanks, Lolly. But you told us it was snowing, so it wasn't snowing?
I indicated a moment before.
When was it?
Heading in the
Blizzard
same
or no
direction,
blizzard?
same directionality, retracing the steps from the night before, heading towards 34 Fairview Road. Why is it that the defendant can see Mr. O'Keefe when they eventually get to Fairview Road and no one else can? It's because she knew exactly where he was. She had hit him and left him there the night before. And she had gone back during that time frame between 5:18 a.m. when she's seen on the Temple video and 5:35 when she arrives at Miss McCabe's house. 5:33 is when the defendant, Miss McCabe, and Miss Roberts return to One Meadows Ave searching for John. 6:03 is when the defendant, no one else, spots Mr. O'Keefe's body buried in the snow. Exhibit 12, indicating this cruiser camera video, which I know you've seen a dozen times. So where I'm starting it from this point in this card right here is the spotlight that Officer Saraf had to use in order to locate, even with the vehicle of Ms. Roberts parked right in the middle of the road.
This is the best use of this video because the video shows there's absolutely no visibility. We're like, we hate this video. But Lally's like, good. Because guess what? This is what it looks like. Now, with all fairness, though, I don't think it reads the way Lally thinks it reads. Let me tell you. Let's go back. I see the ladies here. Now, they're actually in motion. So that's probably why I can see them. Maybe I would be able to, maybe I would not be able to see Mr. Officer O'Keefe's body if in fact it was just me in a car by myself trying to look back and forth. But Lally is saying it's raining, it's snowing so much that you cannot see his body. And there's something nefarious about the fact that she could drive so slow in the snow for over 20 minutes to go to one place that's only a couple minutes away. But yet she could see him in this snow that's overly snowy. It's like, all right, Lally, pick an argument. But that does give good rise to this video. It helps this video have prevalence because it was useless for all intents and purposes, except for the fact it does highlight the fact it's hard to see. It is hard to see, at least straightforward, it's hard to see. But I see them. You know, I see them off to the left. I see them right there. I see the black. But Lally's
in the
point
darkness,
is,
in the snow,
in
the blizzard,
in
in those conditions, the defendant sitting in the back seat of the vehicle knows exactly where Mr. O'Keefe is, covered in snow, as you heard from all of the paramedics, from the civilian witnesses, from the first responders. But the defendant knows exactly where he is. 6:07 a.m., Ms. McCabe calls 911. 6:08, the defendant leaves that 4 or 5 minute voicemail, leaving the phone in the car for some reason to Mr. O'Keefe's phone. 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning is when Ms. McCabe conducts those Google searches. 7:50 in the morning is when Mr. O'Keefe is pronounced deceased at Good Samaritan Hospital. 4:13 to 4:20 p.m. is when the defendant's SUV is towed from her parents' house in Dighton. 5:20 p.m. is when the CERT team arrives in the area of 34 Fairview Road to conduct the search for evidence. 5:30 p.m. is when the defendant's vehicle arrives at the Canton Police Department south.
You can easily tell the age of a woman based off of her neck. When you look.
We circle back for a moment to Mr. O'Keefe, to his families, to his friends, and to his relationship with the defendant. You heard testimony from Paul and Erin O'Keefe that they liked the defendant, that they thought he was good for John, thought he was good for the kids. All outward appearances of the relationship were good. You heard testimony from the children that that was not true behind closed doors. But Paul O'Keefe testified that he told the defendant's parents this, that he liked Ms. Reed, that he thought that she was good for John, thought that she was good for the kids, weeks before John's murder. He even blew her a kiss in the emergency department at Good Samaritan as he was walking out and she was still being treated while they were there. Invited her over to John's house to grieve with him. Invited her to sit down with him while he explained to their nephew Patrick about John's passing. The defendant shows up at the house, abruptly goes upstairs with her father for a period of about 15 minutes, which is about half of the time that she spent there that morning grieving with the family. She left with a bag of her belongings, drove with her family there, and then took an extra vehicle in the height of the blizzard, around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, drives that vehicle all the way from Canton, where it was parked at her boyfriend's house.
Lally can't make up his mind. Either it's snow that you can't drive in and you need to be extra cautious about, shouldn't be driving in it at all. Or there's so much snow, but you still can make it where you need to go in a reasonable time. He can't make up his mind. But it does go into that was a very weird exchange, a very weird activity for defendant Reed to be there for 15 minutes getting her stuff and leaving. But I don't know, it's just an emotional thing. And I can't say that that means the admission of guilt or that it's an expression of guilt. Just being emotional and like, I'm getting my stuff. I'm gonna stay with my parents because I've lost someone that I love. And another thing that I don't think people realize is when you are the spouse or you are the girlfriend and you're not the spouse, you almost feel like you don't have the right to grieve. When my in-laws passed away, it was very hard for me to grieve. They meant a lot to me personally, but I had to be strong for my husband. I wanted to be strong for my sister-in-law and the family. And I had my moments, I went into the room and I just thought about missing my mother-in-law, thought about, oh my gosh, she's actually gone. It was so quick and sudden. Figured we'd have more time than we did. We had a lot of plans. And so it hit me a different way. But I held a lot of it inside because I wanted to be strong enough for my husband to be able to get his emotions out, process through his emotions. And I didn't want to be the one in the room crying like it had something to do with me when, that was their parents and there was other people around that was making it all about them. That was annoying. It's like, okay, you're weird. So anyway, that's kind of how I feel. That could be one of the reasons why Karen is or did that like weird movement of coming and going, if you will. It doesn't seem like it set well with the family. Obviously, they took issue with it. They spoke to it to understand that she was only there for a short period of time, maybe 30 minutes or whatever, and half that time was not interacting with them. But I can kind of get it. Even if you're not a part of the reason why the person has left the earth, there is sometimes a feeling like, do I really have the right to grieve the way I want to in front of them? This is their baby. This is their brother. This is their father. And he meant so much to them as a family unit as well as to the community. She might have just said, let me get to my mom and dad so I can grieve there, so I can cry there, so that it can be about me and not me trying to make it about me in front of other people. That's kind of the way I read it, but Lolly does a great job in using that as nefarious indication. It's like something's up.
She stayed over on many occasions.
Very
drove that
comfortable.
vehicle or felt the
Yeah,
need
but he
to
was
drive
only
that
dead once
vehicle
in her
from
life,
Canton
Larry.
all the way
I mean,
down to
Lolly.
her parents' house in Dayton at the height of the blizzard.
He only died
You heard
once.
testimony from Aaron O'Keefe.
There are many occasions.
Text
with
messages
him.
in the phone call on January 28th.
We all grieve in different ways.
Heard that Aaron O'Keefe called the defendant on the morning of the 29th because she was concerned for her. She wanted to know what was going on with someone she considered her friend. The defendant yells, John is dead. Ms. Robertson grabs the phone and then updates Aaron O'Keefe as to what's going on with John. Aaron O'Keefe again calls back later because she's concerned for someone that she considered her friend. How does the defendant respond? These are some of the little things. The defendant indicates to Ms. O'Keefe that she just has to remember the bad times and indicates to her, I don't think I'll ever see you guys. This is after she's done her quick in and out at One Meadows Ave and is now with her parents or with her father, driving that car, essentially taking the murder weapon from Canton and bringing it down to her parents' house in Dayton. She's indicating over the phone to Aaron O'Keefe, I don't think I'll ever see you guys. Why? If she didn't kill John, why would she say it? You heard a lot of testimony about New Year's Eve in Aruba. You heard the testimony from Ms. O'Keefe in regard to them exchanging, her and the defendant exchanging text messages on the flight down, arranging times to meet up. And then the defendant telling Aaron via text message that she caught Johnny kissing Laura's sister in the hotel lobby. She got into an argument about it, and then they never met up. Meaning the defendant, Mr. O'Keefe, got into an argument about it, and she and Aaron O'Keefe never ended up meeting up in Aruba. You heard testimony consistent from Laura Sullivan, Marietta Sullivan, as well as the children. The kiss never happened. It never would happen based on the relationship, the godfather relationship that John O'Keefe had with Laura Sullivan, her family, and particularly Laura Sullivan's child. The defendant persists with this unfounded suspicion and accusations of infidelity in her text messages with Mr. O'Keefe, in her text messages with Mr. Higgins, where she's accusing Mr. O'Keefe of making out in the lobby with Marietta Sullivan. Both of the Sullivans and the children have the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe following this incident with Marietta Sullivan going into a room. Both of the children testified that they're in that room for about 20 to 25 minutes, and they're arguing about the defendant indicating that Mr. O'Keefe kissed someone in the lobby.
Okay, so lesson number 35, 212. Don't argue in front of the children. Their perception may be exactly right, or it could be overly, perceived or out of context. So try not to argue in front of the children, because guess what? That could be used against you too in a court of law. They're using everything possible in this case up against Karen Read. Arguments in front of the children relative to potential infidelity. Children don't know what she saw, don't know what angle she saw. Most likely she saw something different than what happened. Doesn't seem like the relationship between the young lady and Officer O'Keefe gave any impropriety, but according to Karen's viewpoint, it just was improper. That just shows she had some insecurity in the relationship. And for guys out there, if you don't want your girl to be insecure, give her assurance of who she is in your life. If she's important enough, let her know of her value to you. I don't know that they actually had gotten into where they saw each other. It seemed like they still were trying to build upon their relationship. But what a very unfair advantage or viewpoint to have, to say they argued about him kissing someone, which he really didn't do. The kids are coming to court to talk about that as if something about that is wrong. It's kind of immature of Karen to have had that outburst the way that she did, and alcohol may have made a play in it, but immaturity is not a solution or a causation of death. Immaturity is just a causation of immature responses, such as yelling at the top of your lungs and accusing someone of cheating versus pulling them aside and say, I'm sorry, am I, would love to meet who you are, and I am this person, and am I confused about who I am in this relationship, versus going off at the handle and cursing people out and having an immature response. But nonetheless, Commonwealth has used this. So let's recap where we were. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning of this trial, it was 1,000,000 years ago, 20 some odd, 30 days of actual testimony, 70 witnesses, 200 and some pieces of evidence, and now the jury is in deliberation. They've been doing so since last Tuesday. Half day last Tuesday is when they first began deliberating relative to the evidence of the trial. One of the questions they had last week was, can we see the cert report? The judge denied such a request because that report is not evidence, and it is it's a hearsay, but it doesn't have the hearsay objection. It's clearly hearsay, so that particular report does not avail to them. So they go back into deliberation. Afterwards, they come back on Friday morning after a couple hours and say, Your Honor, we have exhausted our resources. We have exhausted ourselves. We have looked over all of the evidence and come to the conclusion that we cannot agree. And that is what is required. 12 jurors have to come together and agree. Whatever the outcome, they all have to unanimously agree. So they gave wind that they were hung and they have a deadlock. They do not believe that they could agree. well, it was the first time they said such things, and there's so much resource and time and effort that's gone into the trial. Lolly says, look, you know, they just got it this week. They only just got the case on Tuesday, which I'm like, yeah, they got it on Tuesday. They should have had a verdict on Wednesday. Not guilty was so simple and easy because all of the third party had no dog in the fight. Expert witnesses were like, this is impossible. And then even the ME from Canton was like, nah, this had nothing to do with a vehicle. It could be a lot of things. It could have been a fight, you know. It could have been some other animal, but no, none of this looks like vehicle. But still, they didn't come back on on Wednesday with the actual verdict. They still were hammering away. So Lolly's like, it's not long enough. That's kind of reasonable. It is a murder trial. You want them to have real time, like 202 or so pieces of evidence, 70 some odd witnesses. Who do you believe? Who don't you believe? Why don't you believe them? Why do you believe them? You know, what evidence is true and accurate? What makes the difference? What actually happened? Did Commonwealth prove their case from start to finish? Okay, lots of questions, right? Questions. Well, Yannetti, for defense, said, look, Your Honor, they've exhausted themselves. They have done a great job of being diligent enough to look through all the evidence. They have expressed just the same. And of course, it's like, well, look, Tuesday was a half day. Thursday was a short day because someone had an appointment. They couldn't stay. Let's not do that. So the judge brought in the jury and said, great, I so appreciate you. You're working so hard. Keep up the good work. Go back and deliberate some more. Have lunch. Relax. Don't think about it. Just woosah. And then come back to deliberations. You are not released. They went through the rest of the day. No verdict. Weekend came and judge said, look, over the weekend, try to enjoy yourselves. Try to relax. Try not to think about the trial so that you can be refreshed and come back on Monday to do it all over again. Great. Thanks, Your Honor. We don't want to be bothered. No, they didn't say that. That's just my little acquiescence. Anyway, come back on Monday. Here we are today. They came back. Lo and behold, once again, a couple hours in, Your Honor, we appreciate you. We appreciate this case. But more importantly, we appreciate what the verdict would mean. Finding a woman guilty is a high offense. It's a high verdict to give, and we can't give this with clear conscience. The evidence does not speak to that. This is not definitive for us. We cannot collectively, 12 jurors, all in one mind say guilty, or all in one mind say not guilty. We are not collective. We are truly deadlocked. We do not have a way of figuring out how to fix this problem. We are on different sides of the fence and we're not moving, which is kind of good, in my opinion, at least for the defense of the team, defendant team, Reed and all, because it gives rise to at least that whatever position they're on, they're resolute. And if it just so happens to be just one juror who's like, hey, I don't think she's guilty, and everybody else is like, she's guilty, it's no question. At least we know that they are so far resolved. But we are July 1st. Sorry, wish it was January 1st. I can go back and do some things right. Anyway, July 1st. And we're getting ready to have a holiday. How much more are we going to go back and forth with the jury? Do not know how far we can go. But Lolly did his job. He gave something at the end. In the middle, in the trial, couldn't see it. I couldn't see what he could see. But somebody on the jury agreed with Lolly. And we're going to continue. And the closing was a lot better. It was a lot better than his opening and a whole lot better than the trial. So he did his job. Not sure his strategy. I think I got it. I think his strategy was to muddy the water so much, to give him so much evidence that at the very least they'd be a hung jury versus a not guilty. I think that was Lolly's objective. I don't know that Lolly came in this case trying to find her guilty. I don't think he had that kind of case, but we'll see.
And you have Laura Sullivan's testimony.
Just kidding.
20
He
to
doesn't
25
testify.
minutes after her sister comes out and states her displeasure about the defendant. It's about 20 to 25 minutes before Mr. O'Keefe comes out, and then he and Ms. Sullivan have a conversation. Ms. Sullivan indicates that Mr. O'Keefe's phone is essentially blowing up, lighting up with calls and texts from the defendant. I would submit similar to the afternoon of January 28th. Mr. O'Keefe says she's crazy and he needs to take this and goes off from her. Ms. Sullivan has later conversations with Mr. O'Keefe on this Aruba trip, asked him if he's okay, asked him if he's happy. She indicated in her testimony that Mr. O'Keefe shrugs it off and says it is what it is. You heard testimony from the children about the arguments in the weeks and the months. And I know this is a displeasure to defense counsel that the children came in and actually testified as to what happened behind closed doors in the house.
What a cheeky thing to say, Lau. Why is this so cheeky? I know it's to the displeasure of the defense that the kids came to testify what happened in the house. Yeah, they're kids, so they're not a part of the argument. It's hearsay, but whatever. They came in.
They both recall frequent fights. They both recall Mr. O'Keefe trying multiple times to break up with the defendant, asking her to leave the house.
One more intro. Sorry. I just think about some of the times that my kids are like, you and daddy are always arguing. You and daddy, stop. And we're looking at each other like, we're not arguing. She just thinks one thing and I just think another thing. And I'm like, he just thinks something else. We're just talking. We have two different viewpoints. We're people. We're humans. We have two different viewpoints. I don't know how old these children are, but knowing that they've already been through trauma, I can find that any tone that's a little assertive or anything that sounds an octave higher might be triggering to them, not to disparage their perception, but just to understand that children sometimes do not see things the way adults do. And oddly enough, my kids themselves have been like, you guys are arguing. And Henry, my husband and I are like, well, nah, we did what? What are they talking about? And then one of my elders like, you're always this and you're always that. And I'm going, who are you talking about? I call my mom, I call my husband. I don't even understand because everyone has a different way of looking at things.
The defendant refusing to leave the house.
We'll always have to agree.
His niece Kaylee. John tried to
what's
refuse.
going on? Is the fan still going? The fan is
the
rolling. 26 hours
during each argument.
And the fans are rolling.
They both indicated that Mr. O'Keefe had told the defendant that the relationship had run its course, similar to language within the text messages you have between the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe. That Mr. O'Keefe was sick of arguing, again, mirroring those text messages from January 28th, leading up into going out to C.F. McCarthy's, eventually the waterfall, and the defendant killing Mr. O'Keefe in the early morning hours of January 29th.
Well, that's artful. It's very artful. And he does it with the same tone. That's kind of like why I think I was like dozing off with him, because he's so monotone. It happened this way. Whereas I can see Jackson saying, and that's when he killed her. And waking you up and making you think like, what happened? He killed her. Yeah, that's what happened. But I don't even remember him saying this until now, rewatching the actual closing, that he says they had all these arguments. They went out, tried to make it better, and she went off and killed him. Like Lally, come on, get some inflection. You got to present orator. You are the orator of the room. Wake us up.
We have testimony in regard to the ring camera.
Okay, I finally found what boosts my metabolism.
Oh,
and
lady, no, I don't care what you found. Oh, yuck. That looks disgusting.
Kaylee indicated in her testimony that John had that for about a year. So during the course of 2 years or so of the relationship with the defendant, he got it while he was dating the defendant. The defendant had the security code for the garage. Neither of the kids had access to the camera. Trooper Garino checked the laptop and the desktop that were left after the defendant did the quick cleanup upstairs with her father.
Wait, Lally, you mean to tell me he trusted her with access to the Ring camera, but not the kids? Does that really help your argument?
Upstairs in the home. Neither of those devices had access to the Ring cameras. John had access on his phone. The defendant indicates, if you recall, in some of those text messages in regard to the romantic kiss that she placed on Mr. Higgins earlier on January, whatever it was, during the Patriots. Mr. Higgins and Mr. Jackson was indicating weren't very good friends with Mr. O'Keefe, but had been invited over to his home for a Patriots game, in which time the defendant escorted Mr. Higgins out of the garage and placed a romantic kiss on him. But during those text messages, when they're talking about that, if you recall, the defendant is saying something or joking about something that Mr. O'Keefe had been looking at the videos and had been asking her if there was something going on with her and Mr. Higgins. And what was her response to that? I know where the cameras are. There are only two videos missing from that Ring system. One being the defendant getting to Mr. O'Keefe's house after murdering him, and the other when the defendant is showing Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts the broken taillight, both of which, both Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts testified as having occurred. No video. The variety of stories that the defendant tells on the morning of January 29th. There were text messages and voicemails from the defendant to Mr. O'Keefe, 53 phone calls from 12:33 a.m. to 6:03 a.m. 0 phone calls to 911. The defendant calls Katie Camerano. The defendant calls her parents at 1:18 in the morning, 4:38 in the morning, 4:42 in the morning. The call then from Kaylee's phone to Ms. McCabe.
Wait a minute. Is Lolly mad at her knowing where the cameras are? And somehow that means she's deleted something from the camera? That's not what that means, Lolly. And I guess he doesn't have a Ring camera. You don't delete it off of the camera. You have to be able to have access to it on the back end. Like you have to have the login to ring.com. You have to get in the back end to get into deletion. So no. And I know Lolly's not cameras when the Sallyport didn't have many cameras to atone for. They had the worst camera in life, grainiest video that was missing like 30 minutes of when the car comes in and it's supposed to show us the back end to show us how badly damaged the car was. And then they had the other camera that was clear as day, but yet it was inverted and we were looking at the right side thinking it was the left side, and all sides were different sides. Jackson did a great job saying left was right, right is left. But now he's quorum about the fact that she knew so she knew not to kiss him in front of the cameras where they're pointing, because there were camera in the driveway and camera in the house, one door of the house, not both doors, just one of the doors. So what is Lolly's point to that? I wonder. She knew where they were, but yet there's no video footage of when they're looking at the tail light, which is not true. I think we did see video footage because I remember her stopping and looking at it and Roberts going, come on, leave it alone. And she testified to what she saw. So whether there was video footage of her or not, Roberts testified to the fact that she saw little to no damage, like it was very small amount of damage and didn't think much of it. So did the other detective. It was very little damage, didn't think it was that big of a deal. But yet when you put it before us in court, it's a whole missing tail light.
The defendant didn't have Ms. McCabe's phone number. Both Kaylee and Ms. McCabe indicate that the defendant initially indicates or says that she got into a fight with Mr. O'Keefe and left him at the waterfall. From this information, Ms. McCabe then testifies she starts to call her Julie Albert, because Chris Albert, Julie Albert, they live close by the waterfall. Maybe that's where he went. As the phone is ringing, and this is a phone call that both Ms. Albert and Ms. McCabe testify was never answered. As the phone is ringing, her husband Matthew McCabe reminds her that they saw the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe and the car outside of 34 Fairview. So she hangs up.
You won't believe how old this couple is.
Okay, you guys, remember, I'm the commercial, not these people.
During this call or during these subsequent calls, the defendant indicates to Ms. McCabe, maybe I hit him. Did I hit him? She then calls Ms. Roberts at 5 a.m. on the dot, indicates John's dead, hangs up the phone, calls back a minute later, indicates that Mr. O'Keefe was now hit by a plow and that he's dead. And then indicates further that she's drunk and doesn't remember.
So is she indicating these are the things that happened versus could this have happened? Oh my goodness. These are all the possibilities. Maybe someone hit him with a plow and he's dead. Maybe he's dead. He's got to be dead because he would be here if he wasn't. He would never leave the kids alone. All right, Lau.
She tells Ms. McCabe about the cracked tail light before they even get in the vehicle and go anywhere, as you recall the testimony of Matthew McCabe, indicating that he had some concerns about them driving around in a vehicle with a damaged tail light in the middle of a blizzard. Ms. Roberts' testimony that she saw the broken tail light in the driveway at Ms. McCabe's house, and that it was consistent with what she observed in the photographs that were shown to her of it later in the Sally Port at the Canton Police Department garage when the search warrant is executed on February 1st.
Sure. It's consistent. Nothing in
You have
this
the text
case
messages
Molly.
between the defendant and Laura Sullivan from January 29th, in which the defendant indicates to Laura Sullivan that John is dead, indicates that we found him in the snow at 5 a.m. And every indication is that he was found in the snow by the defendant, Ms. McCabe, and Ms. Roberts around 6 a.m. 5 a.m. would be about an hour before. 5 a.m. would be between that time of where the defendant is unaccounted for, heading in the direction of 34 Fairview Road, 5:18 and 5:35. Little things. The defendant asked Ms. McCabe to Google how long to die in the cold. She did so at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning. You have the testimony of Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whitford as to SQLite databases, P-list databases, Knowledge Seed databases, state DB tabs, as far as all of that. Also from Trooper Garino as well. These searches were unequivocally done at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning and not at 2:27 and 40 seconds in the morning. They were not deleted by a user. That is not what deleted means. Frankly, Mr. Green, the last question that I asked Mr. Green is, was he aware that Cellbrite, and by Cellbrite, the person who designed that being Mr. Whiffen, had to alter exactly how their software worked because of people like Mr. Green misinterpreting the data as he did in this case. And what did Mr. Green say? Yes. But those questions, as far as how long to die in the cold, I would submit mirror the questions that the defendant asked firefighter Whitley in the back of the ambulance, if you recall those. She asked firefighter Whitley how long to die in the cold without a jacket. She knew how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed. She knew when she left him to die in the cold how he was dressed. The defendant made statements to firefighter Becker that the last time that she saw Mr. O'Keefe, they were.
Okay, let's just be clear. If she did think she killed him and hit him, asking how long to die in the cold without a jacket to the firefighter who showed up to the scene, is that what he's talking about? Because if you remember, they said they could not pronounce him dead right then because he had to be thawed out. They had to collect his vitals and then they could pronounce him dead. So he was pronounced dead much later in the day, which became the whole hubba bubba between who's going to take the case, the real detectives or the ones, never mind. Anyway, you know, the ones who deal with actual death, because they typically don't, said that he had to actually be pronounced dead before they could take over. So what is Lolly doing? What fetch is he trying to make happen? It sounds like a lot of fetchery to me.
We're in an argument. Again, back of the same ambulance as firefighter Whitley. You have testimony from firefighter Woodbury. Same kind of questions. If Mr. O'Keefe could be alive without a jacket. You have the testimony from each of these firefighters as to sort of the vacillating emotional state of the defendant that morning. What you have in the testimony from firefighter Woodbury is that despite all that, there were no tears that he observed from the defendant at that time. What each of those first responders indicated was that the defendant repeatedly stated, is he dead? Is he dead? Not, is he okay? Is he going to be okay? How is he? Any sort of questions about the medical condition. Is he dead? That phraseology repeated over and over again. And when you take into juxtaposition that phraseology,
caring.
text to Laura Sullivan, found him in the snow at 5 a.m. The unaccounted for time heading in the direction of 34 Fairview Road, 5:18 to 5:35. The repeated questioning, firefighter Whitney, firefighter Woodbury, asking Miss McCabe to look up those things in her phone. She's looking for confirmation, is what she's looking for when she asks over and over again, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
Your child needs these 3 key factors to get into an Ivy League or top 25 university. And it's not having a good GPA or SAT score. Let me explain. 90% of students with a 4.0 plus GPAs get rejected from universities like Harvard, Stanford, and other top 10 universities. Top universities made SAT and ACT submissions optional. And with over 100,000 plus applicants a year, as a parent, you know your child.
You have the testimony that you heard from Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts. I say them together because as far as these 2 women were concerned, they did not know each other really at all. The only time, as they both testified to, that they ever spent appreciably together prior to January 29, 2022, is when Mr. O'Keefe nicely took them out for sneakers because he had some sort of deal at a Reeboks outlet or something like that to sort of try to pay them back for the help that they provided him and the children. Jennifer with respect to the niece, and Kerry with respect to the nephew. But they're both contacted by the defendant in the early morning of January 29th. As Ms. McCabe testified, John was my friend. I love John. He was an amazing guy. At the waterfall, Mr. Albert said going home to have a drink with his son, Brian Jr., if anyone wants to come. Open invitation to the table. She said to Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, you guys should come. Both the defendant and the victim indicated that they wanted to come and that they were coming. She describes the phone calls and the text messages that she receives from Mr. O'Keefe that she's providing directions. She indicates she's providing them directions to go down Chapman. She describes how that is. And you've heard this testimony from a couple of different witnesses as far as the steepness as you're going down Chapman, going down Fairview of coming off of Chapman, that you first go down a big steep hill. It flattens out for a little bit and then.
Okay, we got some more fetchery. Sorry about that. I was having someone arrive. I had to get a package. Okay, so more fetchery. She's not good with directions. There are some people who are not inebriated, Lolly, who are not good with directions. So she turned around. She found it. She got there, didn't she?
And you go down a second, 2 hills going down on Chapman.
Didn't she?
Matching the GPS native location and the health data as far as where the Mr. O'Keefe's phone is, a half mile away from
Wait. Look at Lolly. So Jackson said he didn't want him to have the experts so he could get 2 bites of the apple. Lolly is definitely playing both sides of the coin. 20 minutes ago, he was saying, don't worry about the health data because that is inaccurate. It is not an accurate piece of data. Then he turned around and said, the cell phone data is accurate and it shows that it never moved until 6 o'clock something in the morning when they actually found the body. Now he's talking about hey, guess what? The health data and the cell phone say that he reached the location. Exactly. So why do we now believe the health data? I thought we were throwing that out, Lally. I thought that was not evidence. It wasn't credible. So either it is credible or it isn't. And if it is credible, then all the other pieces of information regarding movement start to matter, don't they?
The time that his health data is reporting that he's ascending or descending.
OnlyFans is still going.
You hear
the still deliberating
testimony from Ms. McCabe as far as the last time that she spoke to Mr. O'Keefe. And she's still trying to provide directions to Fairview because Mr. O'Keefe has never been there before and neither has the defendant, which is further corroborated in Trooper Garino's testimony as far as the vehicle passing by Fairview and then coming back in on the other side. having to reverse direction. But she's giving directions and she indicates that she uses a house that Mr. O'Keefe will be familiar with, that belonging to Bella or Bella's mom. Bella's mom is an ex-girlfriend for a short period of time, a long time ago. However, in the defendant's mind, it's so prescient on her mind that she's still talking about it the next morning or later on that morning when she's riding, going towards Fairview Road with Miss Roberts and Miss McCabe in Miss Roberts' car. She's still talking about it at that time. It's that much on her mind. Miss McCabe indicated that she looked out and she saw the vehicle initially in front of the front door, as did Mr. McCabe, as did Brian Albert Jr., as did Julie Nagel, as did Brian Nagel, and the vehicle moved up several times or several spots to where it was then positioned. Initially at some point in front of the door, then it moves up further so that it's in the area of the fire hydrant and the flagpole where Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered later on that morning, at least by Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts, and then moves up further beyond that. And I say that in the sense of it moves up further beyond that with sufficient distance for it to then go in reverse for 62.5 feet at 24.2 miles per hour, striking Mr. O'Keefe and leaving him where he was found later on the 29th. Again, the testimony from Ms. McCabe that at about 12:40 when she's texting him, she indicated in her testimony she couldn't be certain if Mr. O'Keefe was still out front or had left at that point. She wakes up to a phone call from John's niece, Kaylee, at 4:53 in the morning. This is from an 8th grader, 14-year-old girl. That's why she answers the phone at 4:53 in the morning. She then hears the defendant screaming loudly over and over again, Jen. John didn't come home, got in a fight, left him at the waterfall. The variations, the different iterations of that story as it evolves and changes over the course of that morning.
Yeah.
Ms. McCabe then indicates
the variations that have evolved from your conspiring witnesses, Lally, have been very vast. You're right. Variations have been very vast. They have evolved from your witnesses, but yet you still tried this case as murder.
the defendant, we saw you outside of my sister's house.
With intent.
Then she starts yelling, Jen, did I hit him? Could I hit him? Then they start discussing, or the defendant brings up her cracked tail. Then both Ms. McCabe and Mr. McCabe hear the defendant screaming outside of their home at about 5 o'clock in the morning, or shortly after 5 o'clock in the morning. They go to Mr. O'Keefe's house.
Oh my gosh, this is so comfortable.
Both Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts indicates, and you heard this testimony from a number of different witnesses, friends and family of Mr. O'Keefe, that he had a rule, pretty strict rule in his house as far as you take your shoes off when you come in the house. And so what do Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts both do when they're entering in that house on January 29th? They take off their boots, they get out in the snow, they take off their boots in the mudroom, and then they walk in.
So
what did they both indicate that the defendant did that morning when she came back to the house? Walked right in with the shoes.
So she killed him because she wore the shoes in the house. How about she didn't care about no dang on shoes? She was trying to see where he was. She cared more about him than she did a rule about a shoe that y'all found elsewhere. Never mind.
You hear that second voice?
So what?
It's after the defendants arrive back at One Meadows Ave, after her phone is reconnected with Mr. O'Keefe's Wi-Fi. And you can hear the footsteps. Part of that may be in the garage, part of that might be in the house. Why is it that the defendant has no issue with wearing shoes in the house when Mr. O'Keefe has that strict rule? Because she knows where he is. She knows it's not an issue. He's not coming home because she hit him with her SUV and she left him in the snow.
So that's a very interesting point there, Lally. She doesn't care about the shoe print because she knows he's dead. and he can't yell at her about it. Okay. All right.
Ms. Roberts and Ms. McCabe,
But if she knows he's dead, why do that in front of other people? If you know he's dead, why not act like you have some sense? Because she was nonsensical most of the day. She made no sense. She was, did I do it? She was, maybe I did it. She was walking around with shoes on that she wasn't supposed to have on, according to you. She was running into things she wasn't supposed to run into. Then she was pointing it out to people like, oh my God, I ran into something. What did I run into? Forgetting that she ran into actually his car. So if she did do it, why do stuff that's going to point back to you? Why not shut up and act like you didn't do it? Unless you really don't think you did it. You know, so how do you now improve intent? This is why this case sucks so bad. I mean, the evidence doesn't, even if you could prove that she somehow was the cause, for which the experts say she wasn't, but if you could say she was somehow the cause of this particular man's death and that it wasn't a cover-up, the evidence that you have does not support your conviction, your desire to convict with intent. So why charge intent? Why not say, you know what, she couldn't see, she wasn't paying attention, she was too drunk to pay attention, and she ended up running into him and killing him. I think the jurors could take that easier than they could have thought that she intended to hit him.
frantically sort of
They
running
had an
around the house
argument
looking for Mr. O'Keefe.
about a girlfriend that
And it's
doesn't
not.
exist.
They then get in the vehicle. They drive back towards Fairview Road. And again, the defendant from the back seat of the vehicle immediately sees the defendant, starts pulling and kicking on the door, and runs in sort of a beeline straight over to where Mr. O'Keefe is laying on the front lawn. We have testimony from Ms. Roberts as far as John's phone. John's phone, when the firefighters pick him up, and you recall several witnesses testifying about that, pick him up on the scoop stretcher and they bring him over to the ambulance while they're conducting resuscitative efforts trying to save Mr. O'Keefe's life. But Ms. Roberts indicated that she observed underneath only the phone on the grass in the area that is completely covered in snow in every other area except under Mr. O'Keefe, which I would submit indicates how long Mr. O'Keefe has been there. Now recall, around 12 o'clock or so is when it starts to snow and it starts to stick a little bit. And you heard all that testimony. And I know there was a lot of testimony about snow, a lot of testimony about weather, but there's a purpose to that. There's a point to that, okay? As far as the grass underneath Mr. O'Keefe's body, where his cell phone was, Ms. Roberts observed some 6 hours later after it starts snowing, it's still visible only under Mr. O'Keefe where his body is, which I would submit as evidence to you as to how long he's been there.
I have a question. If it was not snowing, would it indicate that the phone was somewhere else? I mean, that it just snow had it. What are you talking about? It was underneath his body. That's how long it was there. Yeah, it was with him under his body. It would not have magically been anywhere else if there wasn't snow. It was with him. That's where it was, period.
It's time for me to get set up for therapy, and I use this room as my...
No, we don't care. Thank you, but no thank you.
Now, on top of that, you also have hours of ring videos of driveway as far as shoveling and Paul O'Keefe and other people snow blowing and shoveling and all those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a purpose to that as well. If you look at those, if you look at the video of the defendant crashing into Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle at a speed of anywhere from 0 to 5, which even Dr. Wolf would indicate would not cause the damage to the taillight that was observed in this case. You know what you don't see? You don't see snow move off Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle when they come in contact. You don't.
I'm sorry. So the damage that we saw was not damage. So when was her taillight damaged then there, Lolly? Because the picture that the defense put up as she was driving off shows that there was a small piece of the taillight missing.
Don't see any red or clear plastic pieces in the snow. And if you look at those things, videos, not the ones that counsel put up there during his closing, but if you look at each of the video and the stills, you can see the damage consistent with the taillight at each and every point. You see the damage consistent with the taillight from the 507 video, you see the damage consistent from the 822 video from Lieutenant Ray from the cruiser camera video, who's pulling into the driveway. You see the damage consistent from the Dighton video at the defendant's home. You see the damage consistent from the right here, February 1st, 2022, when the search warrant is conducted, Ms. Hartnett removes all those pieces from the vehicle. The weather is all.
So your own trooper or one of the detectives who first saw the car said it was just a small piece, not the whole tail light, just a small piece damaged. Kerry Roberts says it was just a small piece damaged, not the whole tail light. Everyone says it was a small piece. The video off the Ring camera as she's pulling off shows a small piece, not the whole tail light, but a small piece damaged. But Lolly's closing says, nah, it was bigger than that. No. It happened earlier than that. It happened at 12 something at night when she actually hit him. This was artful. And if you didn't have the ability to stay diligent and completely awake and being able to hear every part of the testimony because the AC was on and you couldn't hear every word that was said and not said, and the huffers and the buffers and the maybe Lolly's closing made a difference for them. Maybe you as a juror would have said, oh, really? Is that how the tail light? Oh, okay, that's what the tail light was. Because there was a lot of talk about tail light, but I didn't understand it. But oh, okay. Maybe he's right.
Also important when it comes to the hair. The magic hair, as Mr. Jackson likes to call it. See, the magic hair was actually frozen to the vehicle, as was the glass to the bumper, because the vehicle looked like that on the left when it was caked in snow. When Officer Barrow saw it in the driveway in Dighton as they were wading through 1.5 feet of snow, walking up, because remember, they didn't even pull into the driveway.
So the magic vehicle. Okay, so the hair is magical, and it looked like that to the left. Not the one on the right with all the snow caked on. And the one on the right, if you can tell here, it should be red like it is here, but instead all of that is missing. All of that is gone. Okay. So this is Lolly's demonstrative. Does this help you as a juror? Does this help you decide that in fact Exhibit 102 could translate into what is Exhibit 145 once all the snow is melted? Maybe. It might. You might say as such. It might be, because this looks like it's a smooth curve, and this looks like it has some kind of loop of a curve, like an M shape. I don't know if that makes a difference. I don't know, but good point, Lolly. Good job.
Come down and plow it before they could get into it. That's what the vehicle looked like. What you can see, however, is the damage to the taillight, to the side of that taillight, consistent with it. So that hair, that 7/8 of an inch hair, was frozen to the side. And as you remember, the testimony from Sergeant Buchanan about the heated condition of the Kent Police Department garage, and that's one of the reasons that they took it there, because the other barracks that they could have taken it to didn't have that heated condition. So yes, after it's been in there from January 29th, about 5:30 p.m. until February 1st, when they conduct the search warrant, the hair isn't still frozen, as it's contained within a heated garage, and the pieces of glass on the rear bumper have melted. The snow has melted, as you can see from left to right. The weather, also important, I would submit, weather was a weapon. Remember, the cause of death here is not just blunt impact injuries, it's blunt impact injuries and hypothermia. And you heard all that medical testimony in relation to it, and you heard all that testimony in relation to the snow and the weather and the wind. Wind gusts up to 37 miles per hour while he's out, Mr. O'Keefe is out there in just a shirt and jeans. Now, you heard also testimony from Ms. Roberts in relation to the injuries she observed to Mr. O'Keefe. That initially on scene, there was one eye that was swollen, not the other. That's indication of the swelling that Dr. Scorti-Bella was testifying to, with no indication of physical altercation. And then both eyes being swollen when Ms. Roberts viewed Mr. O'Keefe's body after his passing at the Good Samaritan.
You can easily tell the age of a woman based off.
Wait, but did Lolly just gloss over the fact that they said it looked like he could have been in a fight? That his eyes looked like he was punched?
Submit that all the testimony tells you the same consistent account. internally, externally.
I think
From
he
civilian
did.
testimony to investigator testimony to medical testimony to forensic testimony to the reconstruction testimony. You have the testimony from Ms. McCabe and Ms. Roberts that they couldn't.
Can we look at the movement that was done by the health device? Can we look at that data too, Lolly, or just testimony?
See Mr. O'Keefe at Fairview when they initially pulled up. You can see that from Officer Sarah's cruiser. You have Mr. O'Keefe being covered in snow from the storm. You know where Mr. O'Keefe's body was. It's clearly visible on the cruiser camera from Officer Sarah. You have testimony from each of the responding officers, anywhere from 5 to 12 feet off the roadway, and from the civilians as well. Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, Officer Mullaney has 6 inches of snow on Mr. O'Keefe when he first sees him. Firefighter Kelly says that he couldn't even see Mr. O'Keefe until he was 5 feet away in the darkness, in the snow, in the blizzard conditions. There's no footprints around the body. There's no drag marks around the body. There's no evidence of anything in relation to Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins spent January 28, 2022, traveling to New York City to go to a funeral for another police officer, for another department, who they didn't even know. Traveled all the way down to New York and then came back before the blizzard, only to come back from that, to go out drinking, to come back to Mr. Alb's house, to then murder another police officer who they did know, who worked for the same department as them. And then criminal mastermind genius that Brian Albert is, 28 years on the Boston Police Department, he's then going to just leave Mr. O'Keefe's body on his front lawn. Really?
I was like, wait, did that really happen? Like he almost admitted it, huh? Yeah, really, Lally, really. Yeah, because he had everyone covering it up.
That's a conspiracy.
Actually, I don't even, that's why I'm thinking, like, this is why I said before, the defense did not need to have a counter theory. All they had to show was that the Commonwealth did not have a theory without reasonable doubt, that there was doubt in their theory. So all they needed to show was doubt. They put up a theory and they kept with the theme of the theory, which I don't know if they see it in hindsight. To me, I felt like all they really need to say was Commonwealth has not met their burden. Commonwealth is the one that's supposed to tell you what happened. We don't know what happened because we didn't do it. The defendant didn't do it. She didn't do it. She doesn't know what happened. You know, maybe this, maybe that, or maybe something else. We don't know because Commonwealth is the one that's supposed to prove their case, and they did not prove their case. Instead, Jackson gave the theory of a cover-up, which is a likely theory. It's just the factor that most people are it's in most of us layman individuals to believe the police officers, to believe that they are impartial, to believe that they are investigating and that evidence points into a certain direction. And so the defendant did a great job showing us that, in fact, no, the evidence does not just point in one direction, it points in all kinds of directions. And unfortunately, they didn't investigate the different directions. They only pinned it on the girl. They only went after her and no other suspect. But here is Lolly coming back around saying, listen, their theory of the case is ridiculous. When in fact, the defendant does not need to have a theory. That's not their job.
What evidence do you have of that? You have statements that the defendant made to Sergeant Buchanan on January 29th. She was willing to speak, but didn't want to give too much detail. Conversational tone throughout. She indicated that the night before, they had gotten into an argument, something about what was fed to the children, nothing about the detailed arguments and incessant phone calls and everything else that you saw from the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe's phone on the 28th. She indicated that she got to CF McCarthy's around 9 p.m., started drinking vodka sodas, the men were drinking beers. When asked where she parked her vehicle, she said she parked on Washington Street across from CF McCarthy's, facing northbound on the side, same side as Waterfall. Same testimony that you heard from Ms. O'Keefe, observing the defendant going over to her vehicle in the driver's seat and the victim, Mr. O'Keefe, getting into the passenger seat. She said they were left the Waterfall, were invited to her residence. She drove her and John to the location of Kim. She dropped Mr. O'Keefe off, did not see him walk into the home. She, being the defendant, stated she made a 3-point turn and then left. When asked about the damage to her vehicle, she indicated to the troopers, I don't know, it happened last night.
Okay, I finally found what boosts my metabolism.
So now she doesn't know it happened last night.
June 2022, you have that other recording of that other version that she now has evolved into as far as stating to Sergeant Buchanan, are you aware that John was beaten up by Brian and Colin Albert? We're all in on the same joke, right? John was pulverized and my taillight was cracked. What evidence do you have of that? Mr. O'Keefe never went in the house. You have testimony from Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert Jr., Sarah Levinson, Julie Nagel, all indicating never went in the house. John O'Keefe's phone never went in the house.
Wait a minute. One of those witnesses said somebody did go in the house. Wasn't it Higgins who said it was a guy who did go in the house, or was it McCabe? One of them said a guy went in the house, dark, tall gentleman. That's John O'Keefe's description. Not to mention, so did his Apple Watch. His health data gave some rise to him going up and down some stairs. That's in somebody's house.
From the testimony and the data points that you have from Trooper Green. You know how Mr. O'Keefe was dressed, and you know the defendant knew that. You have the testimony from Kurt Roberts, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Karina Kolakithis, Nicholas Kolakithis, Brian Albert, Cole Albert, Brian Higgins, all indicated in the testimony, and the defendant knew, based on our questions to the firefighters the next morning,
We have the video, Lally. Doesn't matter what anybody said.
that Mr. O'Keefe was not dressed for the weather when he left the waterfall. The weather was a weapon. You have the testimony about the car, the defendant's car being there in front of the house, moving multiple times. You have that from multiple sources.
The weather was a weapon. Are we going to charge the weather too long? I mean, in all intents purposes, I don't, however he got to the ground, I don't necessarily know that they intended him to die, whoever it was. I don't, even though I think he probably got into a fight, I believe that he got hit a couple times, knocked out, and folks figured out he'd get up in a minute. I don't believe a vehicle did it. I don't think she saw him knocked down. I don't think it had anything to do with Karen Reed. But even if she was the one, Lally, it does not make sense. Most people are going to think, oh, you'll get up in a minute. He happened to have been knocked out cold, knocked out unconscious. So then he was knocked unconscious in the cold and ended up dying because of the weather. The weapon of the weather.
You have that from Matthew McCabe. You have that from Jennifer McCabe. You have that from Brian Albert Jr. You have that from Julie Nagel. You have that from Ryan Nagel. You have the testimony of Ryan Nagel, Ricky D'Antonio, and Heather Maxon.
Everyone
indicates
loud,
female
we're
passenger,
snowing.
female operator as the vehicle was
No.
turned. Remember, they're coming towards Fairview at the same time. The defendant, after conducting that reverse, a three-point turn on Cedar Crest, is then taking a right on Fairview, while Mr. Nagel, Mr. D'Antonio, and Ms. Maxon are taking a left on Fairview. Mr. Nagel indicates that Mr. D'Antonio then flashes lights. During that time, Ms. Maxon can see inside the vehicle. She sees a male passenger. She sees a female operator. They follow the vehicle as they're turning onto the street. Lo and behold, they're going to the same residence. They park. There's nothing in between them and the defendant's vehicle. They indicate that at no time do they see anybody get out of the vehicle. At no time do they see any damage to the vehicle, or it hasn't happened yet. At no time do they see anyone leave the vehicle and go into the house. The vehicle moves up on different successive occasions, as explained to by Mr. Nagel and several others. And then as they're passing that vehicle, Mr. Nagel indicates that he sees a female operator in the vehicle with the dome light on. Well, interesting, when I asked Mr. Nagel, as far as when Julie Nagel came out to the vehicle, did he roll down the window or did he open the door? He indicated he opened the door. And I asked him, what happened when you open the door? What happens when you open the door to a vehicle? The dome light comes on. So there's a reason I would submit, or the inference that you can make, is that no one sees Mr. O'Keefe in the vehicle because that's the moment he steps out of the vehicle. And then they're gone. The Nagels, Ryan Nagel, Ricky D'Antonio, and Heather Maxon drive away from that. We have the testimony from Julie Nagel and Sarah Levinson, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich conversation they have with Ms. McCabe, which while they're pulling away from the house, where everybody's attention is drawn, Ms. McCabe is turned around facing both of them in the backseat. Ms. Nagel is facing Ms. Levinson on the passenger side, looking out the window towards 34 Fairview Road. Ms. Levinson is looking back at Ms. Nagel, away from that area, in which Ms. Nagel indicates that she sees a 5 to 6 foot dark blob on the lawn near the pole in the hydrant, which is just where Mr. O'Keefe is discovered the next morning. You have testimony recalled, and you have text messages in regard to Colin Albert when he gets picked up.
Mr. Lally, 5 minutes.
Yes. Colin Albert, Miss Allison McCabe, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Caitlin Albert, Brian Jr., all indicating that we picked up around that time at 12:10 a.m. You have the testimony from Chris and Julie Albert, his parents, as far as when he comes home, kisses them goodnight before he goes to bed. You have that testimony in regard to Chris Albert, as far as how John O'Keefe and the defendant come to be at the waterfall in the first place, as far as John O'Keefe and his nephew coming in early in the day, getting a slice of pizza, what are you doing later on, contained within those texts. You have testimony from Lieutenant O'Hara, Lieutenant Tully, Sergeant Mechanic, about those items being recovered. And in particular, the items being recovered on January 29th by that search. What did Lieutenant O'Hara say? The items were found close to the curb. The items were at ground level, 3 feet of snow that they had to sift through in order to find those particular things. The detail or the delay in the recovery of evidence. The photos in the video, most of which you have in evidence, is earlier in the storm. This is before the 18 inches of snow falls down, before there's drifts and 3 feet of snow in places. They found evidence where it had been at that same ground level, in the grass, under the snow, at 34 Fairview Road.
Okay.
We heard all the medical testimony.
Wait. Something happened. We got to go to court. Their movement. I don't know if this, gosh, I hope this is not some kind of, law and crime has gotten me so, gotten me before. Oh no, not this one. Hold on. We want to go here. Okay. Can you see it? Hope you guys can see. Yes. Okay. So here we have this spinny fan of death. The only fan is in the house. Something happens, and I hope this is new and not them replaying. Anyway, jury is now 26 hours of deliberation. Local time is 2:35 p.m. And something happens. We got court activity. So what was it? Tell us what it is. What happened? What happened? Get us there. Oh, the only fan of death. Okay.
Thank you. Be seated. Closing session.
22-117 Commonwealth versus Karen Reed.
All right, the jury is at an impasse. So we'll bring them in.
Oh, no. Good for Karen, but not good for Karen. We'll talk about it afterwards. I think this is recent. I'm trying to make sure this is not earlier today.
You rise for the jury.
There's the brother, poor kid. I mean, not to say it like that, but poor guy. It's to the family as a whole. It's a sad day for them. Officer O'Keefe does not get justice. But I don't think she did it. I really don't.
All right, Mr. Foreman, I am in receipt of your note. Judge Cannoni, despite our rigorous efforts, we continue to find ourselves at an impasse. Our perspectives on the evidence are starkly divided. Some members of the jury firmly believe that the evidence surpasses the burden of proof, establishing the elements of the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Conversely, others find the evidence fails to meet this standard and does not sufficiently establish the necessary elements of the charges. The deep division is not due to a lack of effort or diligence, but rather a sincere adherence to our individual principles and moral convictions. To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service. Okay.
All rise for the court, please.
Okay, mistrial. It's a mistrial, everybody. Oh, is it good? Is it bad? Does it hurt you? How do you feel? Oh, this hurts. It hurts me. I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it hurts me. It's an actual mistrial.
Thank you. Be seated. Closed session.
All right, I'd like to pick a status date to find out what our next move is. So I'd like to come back sometime, maybe the end of July. I understand people have vacation schedules. Can we come in the week of the 21st?
Oh, the mom. Don't do that. Don't zoom in on the mom. That's so rude. Stop. That's so rude. Oh, that's so rude. Leave her alone.
Could we do the 22nd at 2 p.m., Your Honor?
Go to Yannetti. He's talking.
And I would hear from my client.
All right, is there another day that week? Could you do the 25th or 26th?
Unfortunately, I think I'm supposed to be for vacation on the 19th.
That is rude.
Okay, the 22nd and the 24th are not great dates. So
What about the 19th at 9?
I cannot get out of.
Can we do August 7th, 8th, 9th? Any of those days?
No, we'll do the 22nd. We'll go back to the 22nd at 2. I can't let it go that long.
Law and crime. Go back to the attorneys. Get off of the family. That is so rude. God, it's so rude. We get it. We know they're sad. Move off of her.
22nd, we had a hearing in Los Angeles on 22nd.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
proposing to appeal remotely anyway.
Okay.
But for a status conference, I don't want the court to think it's disrespectful to the court, but we will not.
Okay. So you and your client will be here in person, Ms. Giannetti.
So Jackson
All
won't
right.
be at the status conference. Why couldn't we stay here? I don't know.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you then.
Football rise.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. There's her dad. Clearly, she goes to her parents for moral support. It's always been that way. I don't know who that guy is. I guess her brother. Yeah, let the family out first. The O'Keefe family passes by. I think the brother looks at her. I don't know in what way, but he looks at her. There is a okay, so we'll talk about this. There is a good report in the fact that it's a mistrial, in this that we found out that it's not just one person, right? It wasn't just one juror. Based upon the information coming from the judge, the notes said some of us feel one way and some of us feel another way, and we don't want to exclude ourselves from our moral certainty and our moral beliefs. And the evidence, one set of people believe in the evidence and another set of people do not. All right, the fan is back in town. Wait, let's see if we get. I'm surprised they're not going out to. Now this is when you can go out to the courthouse steps when people are leaving. We need to know what's happening there. Law and crime. You're not going to show us the courthouse steps? No, they're not. They're just showing us their lovely, whatever that thing is. Anyway, so Yannetti did his job. Yeah, Yannetti did his job, and so did Jackson. They both did their job because Jackson gave enough rise to say, Jackson, Yannetti, and team gave enough rise to say the burden on the Commonwealth to prove that she did it has not been met. Yannetti did his job, and his job was done well in closing. The rest of see what's happening. Yeah, the rest of the presentation was not all that interesting. It was not well put out in my opinion. But what is his name? Lowley put up the best, I guess he could, which was, as far as I'm concerned, he muddled the waters. He muddled everything possible and put everything up against the wall, and then turned around and said, okay, now it's your turn to figure out what happened. As far as I'm concerned, she did it. That's the way I take it. You know, that's the way it looks like to me. That was his strategy. And at the end, at the closing, he did a very good, presentation of, well, this is what the evidence shows. I don't know that we agreed. I didn't necessarily agree that that's what the evidence showed, but someone did. Like I said, someone did. And there is a mistrial. So it's good for Karen Reed that it's a mistrial because it's a mistrial and she's not being convicted. But it's bad for Karen Reed because she's not being acquitted either. So since it is a mistrial, they can come right back and do it all over again if they so choose. And with this, okay, we got some reporting here. With the evidence being presented the first time and the show of it all, we can find out if Yannetti thinks he can do a better job the next time. Now, remember, they did say, hey, Your Honor, we are not ready. We need more time. Commonwealth and defense both said that. And you got an FBI investigation going on to determine what's going on in this case. Is it being handled appropriately? So there is some effort to, this case didn't have the evidence to show one way or the other. So there's a mistrial declared. Okay, so here's some of Boston CBS News outside of
Really, to a degree,
when the judge just declared the mistrial.
calling this a victory on their end and saying the prosecution failed.
That's their sound, not ours.
Different environment out here, and that, you know, we tried to ask Karen Reed how she felt now that this actually isn't over. Over the course of this trial, she's been willing to speak to reporters. I've spoken with her many times outside, and she said, I just can't wait for this to be over. It's not over. You know, a mistrial is the opposite of this being over. There's already another court date for the end of this month scheduled, and Karen Reed said nothing on her way out of court.
A court date for a status conference. The status conference is gonna say, hey, Commonwealth, do you want to do this again? So
we don't know if the O'Keefe family maybe exited privately. They have been very private in not speaking with media folks or really engaging in anything.
And I did not like that, Law and Order. That was bad, poor taste to zoom in on the mom. Bad, poor taste. I think we have to remember that these are individuals. These are their lives. This is Karen Reed's life. These are the O'Keefe's life. All O'Keefe's lives. All of them. All of the Reed family lives. These are lives. And zooming in on someone else's pain and hurt and exploiting that during a time. I mean, it's one thing to just touch it and say, okay, she's crying. The family has a, you know, obviously a reaction. But to turn around and just zoom in and stay there when we're talking about court dates and moving to the next level, that I didn't like.
Thing going on outside of this courthouse, and as you know, there has been so much.
And so it's no longer snowing in Boston; it's raining.
Activity outside of this courthouse, so we don't know if they'll be coming out this front door or if they exited privately out the back.
Okay.
You know, just wanted sides, no res. Kind of
indebted. Cheryl
and yeah, great. Oh, I have that exact same.
Also joins us live in Dedham right now, Tammy.
Okay, anyway, lady, pay attention. We're on the camera.
Email here from Noni when he said that we do have an after announcement. Let's take a listen.
The Commonwealth did their worst. They brought the weight of the state based on spurious charges, based on compromised investigators and compromised witnesses. This is what it, guess what? They failed. They failed miserably, and they'll continue to fail. No matter how long it takes, no matter how long they keep trying, we will stop fighting. We have no quit.
Alan, you're going to stay on?
Go ahead. I just have two things to say, folks. Number one, I am in awe of the strength and courage of this remarkable client that I've had the privilege of representing since day one. And number two, I want to send a message to all of her supporters out there. Your support was invaluable. Touched, and we ask for your continued support. I'm not from Texas like my colleague here. I'm a Boston kid, but I'll repeat what he said, which is we ain't got no quit.
And what you just heard there.
Okay. So Alan's from Texas by way of California. That's great. I think that's all of what I wanted to see, which was, yeah. Yep. I don't see anything else. Everything else is opinionated. So guess what? We don't need their opinion. You got mine, right? I'm here to give the opinions around this place. No, just kidding. But yeah, no, I am. It's my channel, so I shall. As we saw just now, Alan Jackson says the Commonwealth, and the sound is in and out. That has to do with where they are on scene. That wasn't us. That's their sound. But Alan Jackson puts it out there. The Commonwealth did not do their job. They didn't do their job. And that is truthfully their job to do, is to prove the circumstances, to prove the evidence into the convictions that they believe the charge is supporting. So, you know, Alan, maybe next time we're not going in with theories to counter what the Commonwealth is saying. We're going to poke holes in the fact that what they're saying is not improvable, right? Let's try that next time. I don't know. We'll see if we have a new trial, and if we do, we'll see if Alan stays on. Someone did ask that, but he did not respond to that question. Alan is expensive. Well, all attorneys can be expensive because legal is expensive. I say this all the time. When you're paying for an attorney, you're not just paying for what you see them do, you're paying for all the things they do you don't see. For them to research, for them to take phone calls, for them to send out emails, receive emails. If someone else calls them, they got to answer the phone and start talking about your case. It gets charged upon you. So legal procedures are highly expensive, and that's after or on top of whatever filing fees there are from the court. Now in California, we have some high filing fees, but I was listening to some other courts. They were like $50 here, $75 there. I was like, oh no, we have hundreds, like 500 and some odd dollars, $600, whatever it is, filing fees. So I was like, right, $75 for a filing fee? Oh, okay, that's good. That's reasonable. My clients wouldn't be mad at that. But nevertheless, trying to make a little light out of something that is very stark. It is jaw dropping. It is painful. And it's painful because this officer is not alive. This officer was important to a lot of people. And for whatever reason, he's not alive. It's a sad day for his family, just because they don't get closure. But it's my argument that that was the Commonwealth's job, was to give them closure. And the Commonwealth as a collective did not do that. From troopers, from recusing departments, to still being active, to falling dead on a first responder's lawn, and no one taking notice. And here's one of my number one things that goes out of my mind when it comes down to the McCabe presentation. She says, oh, I saw the car, and then he never came in the house. You saw the car outside for 15 some odd minutes, and no one went outside and said, knock, knock, you're here. This is the right location. Come on, you're right. Come inside. You know this person has never been there. This is their first time coming. And you see them outside, and you never go out and say, come on inside. You made it. You found us. They were on the phone with you 10 minutes ago, making U-turns and turning around. They were lost in the area. Hey, you found it. It's us. Come in the house. No one does that, supposedly. But yet all indications for the data on his health data says that he was in motion, that he took steps. He took descending steps. Sounds like he made it somewhere that allowed him to walk down and come back up again. But unfortunately, they called the mistrial. Thankfully, they looked at the evidence. Thankfully, they stuck to their morals. I understand that I thought it would be not guilty. Some others thought it would be guilty. I understand we have our viewpoints, but remember, when it's just one of us trying to make a decision, that's easy. When it's 12 of us trying to unanimously decide, that is extremely hard. That is a very high bar to reach. Can you imagine 12 people trying to decide what restaurant to go to after the graduation party? After the graduation? Someone's losing. No one is going to have, not everybody's going to always agree, right? Especially when it comes down to the bottom line. So this is quite unfortunate. As much as Jackson says Lally did not do his job as a Commonwealth, I don't think it was just Lally. I think it was the whole. I think it's the way that they had the sippy cups and collection of evidence and taking witness statements collectively versus individually, being involved when they weren't supposed to be involved, rehoming dogs out of the blue, switching their household out of the blue. And there are possible reasons for every last one of those. I mean, like I said, as a legal-minded person, I can argue different opinions on all things, whether I believe them or not. However, we are now have heard from the jurors. They have decided mistrial. They refuse to acquiesce. They stood for their ground. They saw the evidence as they saw it, and they did not come to a consensus, but at least they were able to stand their ground and be of a resolved mind and not that of a follower. So I'm so glad you were able to watch this with me. We got it all in real time. It's an unfortunate outcome for someone. Someone's not happy and someone is. But at the end of the day, no one would have ever been completely happy because justice was not ever served to this officer. And may he rest in peace, even though this is going on and the case may in fact go back to trial. We'll find out from the status conference at the end of July. Until the next video, I am Lyric Armstrong, your real estate agent and advocate. Have a great day. Enjoy your 4th of July. Enjoy your Independence Day. And think of Officer O'Keefe in the positive way possible. If you're a praying person of good faith, please do so for the O'Keefe family, that they have some type of comfort in having each other around. And may God bless those children, okay? Talk to you later. See you in the next video. Oh, like, share, and subscribe, please. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
For everything real estate, you're in the right place. 'Cause Miss Lyric's here to educate. If you're a first-time buyer, don't roll the dice. A long-time investor searching for the right price. If you need to learn real estate, living split, well, Lyric Armstrong will be your advocate. If anyone can help this, Lyric can, to keep your American dream in good hands. Oh yeah.